shot and wounded by unknown attackers. Tsefkgofatso Makgatla was ambushed on the D21 road between Mahlakung and the Sekororo Hospital. Municipal spokesperson Justice Shipalana says Makgatla is in a stable condition in hospital.
Preliminary investigations revealed that unknown suspects started to open fire and shot at him. The motive of the shooting is still unknown at the present moment. He sustained multiple gunshot wounds.
The Colony Magistrates Court in the Northwest has postponed a case against more than 40 suspected illegal immigrants to Monday and Wednesday next week. The suspects from Malawi, Zimbabwe and Mozambique have been remanded in custody until Monday to grant the court time to find interpreters. Those from Lesotho will reappear on Wednesday. They were arrested last Thursday at a construction site in Colony. Their employer, Simton Manyena, was arrested on Friday and has paid an admission of guilt fine of 63,000 rand. Provincial Police spokesperson Sabata Mokhwaboni.
We can confirm that it is quite a lot considering weekly operations under Chanela, wherein we arrest or report not less than 50 arrests per week. In addition, a lot of undocumented persons are also arrested weekly through the Vala Umgodi operations. In the operations between the 19 and 25 August 2024, for example, we arrested 198 undocumented persons.
And police in the Indian state of Manipur say suspected rebels have used drones to drop explosives on the security forces, calling the unprecedented tactic a significant escalation of violence. 2 people were killed and 6 others wounded, as the BBC's Lipika Pelham reports.
A police statement says a 31-year-old woman was among the 2 people who died in the attack, allegedly by Kuki fighters, who dropped heads of rocket-propelled grenades from the drones. The woman's 80-year-old daughter was also injured in the attack outside the regional capital Impal, which the police say is an escalation of the rebels' war tactics. The authorities warn it may mean the involvement of highly trained professionals. Ethnic violence between the mainly Christian Kuki and the predominantly Hindu Meitei community in Manipur killed at least 200 people last year.
The top story at 3 o'clock, Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen has expressed confidence in the relations between South Africa and China. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
In sports this hour, Luzon Kutsia bags second medal for Team South Africa. Kolisi to miss the second test, and SA20 set to begin on the 9th of January. I'll have more on this and other sports stories at 3:30.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
The Mediterranean Knights are after the big prize, a win in the opener of the AFCON qualifier. But Amavubi differs and insists on traveling back home with a massive bag of 3 points. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Libya versus Rwanda on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I just wonder if I asked you this question and I said, what moves the National Pulse today? How are you going to answer it? What is it for you that moves the pulse of the nation right now? A lot has happened over the weekend. I'm talking about today. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the National Pulse. My name's Ashraf Garda. As always, we do the show from 3 to 6 every single weekday. And great that not only do we do it, but you engage with us on air. Really appreciative. And of course, also using social media, which is really strong. You can tweet, you can Facebook, use that hashtag, The National Pulse. But to call in answer to my question, 086 000 2032. And then if you wish to send us a voice note only, 30 seconds each, preferably, because it just allows us to manage more voice notes, 0614 104 107. I tell you what, just a quick one, did you go to the rugby on Saturday? I know Pirates also played, and I know Sundowns lost, so there were two domestic games, one international game, right? But did you go to the rugby on Saturday? And if you did, do you have a picture of yourself when the national anthem was sung? Because again, it just shows you just how incredibly powerful it is when it is sung. But here's a question for you right now. You know what happened with the Boks? There's some sense of resilience about how they do things, isn't it? So not only did the Springboks win coming back from the dead, not only was the train system in operation to Ellis Park for the first time in I don't know how long, not only was the park around Ellis Park completely revamped and shushed up to try and look very, very pretty, everything seemed to be working in working order. So my question to you is this: if we can get it right in pockets, from the team to the transport to other things, what is it that prevents us getting it right across the length and breadth of our country? You know, I often talk about building a champion nation. That means being best in class across the board in everything we do. So what's missing? I want you to tell me, in fact, what do we need to do to get it right across the length and breadth of South African society, so we don't just talk about the Springboks, and we don't just talk about the beautiful train ride to Ellis Park over the weekend. I'd like to know, and I'd look forward to your conversations on this issue. In the meantime, let's get cracking with our first story. Reports are suggesting that Nehawu in KwaZulu-Natal in particular, well, they intend to dump, the key word is dump the ANC in favor of the former President Jacob Zuma's MK party. Remember, many of these unions are aligned by their very nature, right? Now, the union's mother body has rejected these claims, saying they are taken aback by this sense of fake news. Well, the provincial leadership says those who are said to be part of leading this campaign are not known to the union. Well, I understand there's also a press conference called up by Nehawu, like as we talk, and if we get a chance, we'll cross live to them if they start within the next few minutes or so. In the meantime, let's get the clarity with Ayanda Zulu, who's the provincial secretary of Nehawu in KwaZulu-Natal. Ayanda, welcome to the National Pulse.
Thank you very much. Greetings to you and the listeners of SAFM.
Thank you. So, firstly, a point of clarity. Many, unions in some form or the other are aligned to political parties. So, for the record, who has Nehawu been aligned to up to now? And then we'll talk about the next.
I think that is public knowledge. You know that Nehawu is an affiliate of COSATU. COSATU is in alliance with the African National Congress, the South African Communist Party, and SANCO. So Nehawu derives its political direction, its federation, which is COSATU. And these decisions have been affirmed by the highest decision-making body of Nehawu, which is the National Congress. And gradually, also our biggest body in between the Congresses, which is called the Central Executive Committee.
Okay, so you're right. I certainly know that. That was just for the record. Now let's get to the other for the record. What about the story that Nehawu is actually moving across its affiliation outside of COSATU, in fact, to a party that, in fact, to an alignment that will put them in line with the MK party? Yes, no?
No. That's why in our statement we're very clear that these are fake news, extremely fake news, on the basis that even people who are called branch leaders of Nehawu, they are not leaders in any branch of Nehawu. Two branches were identified there, which is Prince Mshien Hospital and Golozan Hospital. Those names mentioned, they don't even appear at the union's database, or there are even workers employed by those two hospitals. Our two branches have written letters to the provincial secretary of Nehawu, myself, informing us that they don't know these people and there's no such discussion. Now, in KwaZulu-Natal has got more than 230 branches. Every month, Nehawu convenes what is called branch executive committees, the leadership of the branch and the general members meeting, which involves all members. After that, there will be regional meetings. Then there's a provincial meeting next week. This discussion have not arisen as members of Nehawu are preparing themselves for the 2025-2026 salary negotiations in the public service, which is one of the issues that is now central to the work that we are doing. So there have never been such a discussion in the members' meeting and the executive structures from the branch, region, and the province, which are the platforms that Nehawu always open platforms for political engagement within its structures.
All right, I understand. So you're saying, for the record, both in terms of what you're telling me now and in terms of your own statement, there is no truth in that story at all. Nehawu is not leaving its alignment with COSATU, which by then extension would mean alignment with the African National Congress, and they're certainly not going to the MK party, right?
It's lies. That is why we are clear to say we will be writing to the press ombudsman as Nehawu.
I understand.
Because that story by Sunday Times is actually
okay. I've heard that point, right? So I got that. Yes. Now you're also saying there are some people who are claiming that, and they are with one or two branches of Nehawu. So is that correct, that there are some people who are part of branches who are purporting or claiming to speak on behalf of Nehawu, who are saying just that in fact they're moving to the MK party? Is that happening?
No, but that is the point that was clarifying, which I think you might have misread. I said those two branches, those people who are quoted by Sunday Times or interviewed by Sunday Times, are people whom cannot be traced as leaders who are not leaders of Nehawu, who are not members of Nehawu, who are not even employed in those workplaces. Sunday Times was purporting to be working in those two hospitals. That is why it is validated that this story is a fabricated story, because those two names are not leaders of Nehawu.
I understand.
They are not members of Nehawu. They are not even employed to work in those hospitals.
So that means you're actually not even familiar with them. I mean, you don't know these people who are claiming to speak on behalf of your organization, right?
They don't exist in KwaZulu-Natal.
All right. Then Nehawu is having a press conference as we talk right now. What's the need for that press conference?
No, I think it would be fair for us to listen to that
I understand.
Press conference, because it's beyond our jurisdiction.
Okay, all right. In fact, I believe the presser is just about starting. So what we'll do is let me thank you for your time, Ayanda Zulu. We'll actually cross to the press conference that, and at the moment, Fikile Mbulula is actually talking, the SG of the ANC, talking and addressing that presser. So let's cross to them directly.
Supported by a number of Nehawu office bearers and the ANC Provincial Secretary, Comrade Pekim Tolo. The meeting was cordial, robust and honest in the articulation of the impact of Comrade Mtolo's remarks on members of Nehawu. In our robust engagements on matters of mutual interest, we agreed that members of the Alliance, and by extension their affiliates, are independent organizations that are well within their rights in expressing dissenting views on the policy positions and decisions of the African National Congress. However, the alliance partners have always differed on a variety of issues and have always managed to engage on issues by ensuring that the space for political engagement remains open. There is no reason that we cannot address the current challenges in a similar manner. The meeting appreciated that Comrade Mtolo's remarks were unfortunate, and the platform chosen to air such views fueled the tensions, rather than a constructive political engagement between members of the alliance. We therefore resolved that Comrade Pekim Tolo, the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, will issue an unconditional apology to Nehau and retract the unfortunate remarks he made. Similarly, Nehau will withdraw the court challenge against the ANC and the provincial secretary in this regard. Going forward, we have agreed to conduct a joint program in KwaZulu-Natal with COSATU and Nehau to engage with the workers on the ground and clear the air on matters that have polarized relations as a result. End of the statement. I need to add that the retraction is unconditional and is after a process of engagement, of which Comrade Mtola himself politically have seen independent that indeed the remarks were misplaced and were overboard. And for that reason, the remarks will be withdrawn, not as an imposition, as something that out of engagement in the meeting with our comrades from Nehau, it became very clear that the remarks that he made were misplaced. First, the question that needed to be answered was what necessitated those remarks. And Comrade Mtolo did explain that it was a reaction to the input made by the General Secretary of the Communist Party at the political school of Nehau. And Nehau said it was a political school for ideological training of its members, and many members of the alliance came to the school and expressed their viewpoints. The views they expressed at the platform of Nehau necessarily do not represent Nehau's disposition. Nehau can speak for itself. So even if that was the case, if we were to engage with the remarks of the General Secretary of Communist Party, we need to also have constructive and substantive political engagement with such, not with howling and also attacks on the Union, which is an ally of the African National Congress. So on the basis of that, it became very clear that indeed they were misplaced, and that the freedom to express oneself on political views within the alliance is allowed. It doesn't mean if any member of the alliance does not agree with, for instance, the topical question now, GNU, that people cannot express themselves. But we have also agreed that it is important to be constructive. It's not for the first time in the ANC and the alliance.
Okay, we'll just pause for a moment. We will rejoin that ANC and Nehau press conference shortly.
Hey, Mike, congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Andile. Are you preparing for it?
Yes, but not just for myself.
For you and?
For me and my employees.
Oh.
You know, since we moved to Old Mutual Corporate, their retirement funds have not only been safe and secure, but gaining competitive returns through exposure to diverse investment markets.
Impressive.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Okay, in fact, what we'll do is we won't cross to that press conference because we'll talk about other issues as part of the daily Global Watch feature we have. Let's pick up what has happened in the Middle East. It's been a hotbed and we've covered it extensively over the last few months. What I understand is there's been two things that are significant in what is called Israel over the weekend. There's been news of them being able to find out there's at least 5 hostages, abducted by Hamas who've been actually killed, shot, so I understand. And then subsequent to that, there's been massive protests in Israel, particularly in Tel Aviv, against Benjamin Netanyahu to say, well, it's the failure to negotiate that has cost these people their lives, and we have to stop that. It's rather complex. Let's find out more about it with Tembisa Fakude, as always. Tembisa, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Right, you've heard my intro. Is that how you see it? Is that what's happened?
No, first of all, this is Benjamin Netanyahu, the same person who killed 3 sons of Ismail Haniyeh while they were negotiating. 1. 2 is he also went on to Iran to kill the same person that he was negotiating with. So the same guy who's saying that he's not going to, the Hamas is not serious about the deal while they're killing hostages. But of course, Hamas has said they haven't killed any hostages. The hostages were killed by Israeli fire. So what's happening today, the courts, a couple of minutes or at least an hour ago, has issued an instruction for the labor union that is called, or amongst the people that have called for this protest, to stop the protest with immediate effect. So whilst there are protests going on, the labor union has been instructed by the court to stop the protests, but I don't think that's going to work because the Israelis are already on the street calling for the ceasefire.
Okay, so let's take it a step back. I mean, they're calling for so when you say Israelis, those are citizens calling for a ceasefire, right? Let's talk about what you understand by what we found that 5 hostages were killed. So I'm getting conflicting reports. Shot by Hamas, shot by Israeli soldiers. Tell me what's happened there.
Well, I don't believe Israeli propaganda because they've been wrong so many times. But we know that Hamas has issued few statements, and those statements have been accurate. Hamas has said yesterday that the hostages, 6 of them that were killed yesterday, was killed by Israeli fire or by the continual bombardment of Gaza by Israel. So that's what we believe. But of course, Netanyahu would like to send a different messaging to the citizens of Israel, most of whom are waiting for those hostages to be released and are blaming Netanyahu for the killings that are continuing. And I think this is a big one. If there is anything more happening to the hostages, the situation is going to intensify. But I don't see the current protests dying down, having had that news yesterday that 6 of these hostages were killed.
All right. So why? Let's take yourself. Why are you so convinced that the 6 that were killed by Israeli soldiers and not by Hamas? I mean, in both cases, what's your proof of that?
Well, it doesn't serve Hamas any good to be killing hostages because that's the only bargaining tool they have with Israel. So the more they keep the hostages alive, better for them. So if they're going to continue killing the hostages, they'll have nothing to bargain with. So that's what makes me convinced that it's not Hamas that has done so. But besides, Hamas has issued a statement, and as I've said earlier on, most of their statements have not been disputed in the past, but we know that Israel has committed acts of aggression and killed, maimed and destroyed property and issued statements that were totally contrary to what has happened on the ground. So that's why I believe that Hamas is correct, and they've got nothing to lose by killing the hostages.
Okay, let's then talk about the citizens' response in Israel, I understand, in Tel Aviv in particular, right? So give me a sense of what type of response are they getting? What are they calling for, and what's their motivation? Well, you've touched on the word ceasefire. What's their motivation around that? And maybe the fourth one in one go, what has been the official government response to that?
Well, first of all, it doesn't mean that because there are protests on the streets, the Israeli citizens are against what's happening at the moment in Gaza. In fact, they are supportive of the war and the continual destruction of property and killing of women and children in Gaza. What they want their hostages back, and they support the families of the hostages. And the reason why they're calling for the ceasefire is because they want their people back, not because they feel aggrieved, feel pain because of what's happening in Gaza. It's because they just want their people back. So that's very important to mention. And the continuation of this protest, of course, likely to put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, who is on a back foot at the moment, because he's not only facing, that is Israel, and him and Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, they're not only facing ICC and ICJ, but Benjamin Netanyahu had problems with the courts before October the 7th, and is likely to face a jail time should this subside or there's a ceasefire. So what he's doing at the moment, kicking the can down the road and hoping that Donald Trump, who is agreeable with his politics, wins in November in the United States. And if that does happen, of course, that will prolong his political career.
Okay. Well, as always, I don't know how often I use the word very, very complex when you want to see what comes out of that. Interesting one. Tembisa Fakulia, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. I think the significant thing coming out of that is this, that the protest, as Tembisa Fakulia suggested, is not to end the war, but to agree a deal with regard to the ceasefire to protect the hostages and their lives, which I think understandably from a purely humane point of view, people would want their families released, whatever the situation is. But the numbers of protests in terms of people on the streets in Israel or in Tel Aviv have been massive. And that it's into the separate conversation about just the future of Benjamin Netanyahu. If you know more about that and where you think the solutions will be, what I always talk about it, the just peace, I'm certainly up for it. You can WhatsApp us, text 0614 104 107, or to call in 086 000 2032. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30. Here's Madupi.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Ashraf. A very good afternoon. In your headlines, the Sawa government has put in place a stringent licensing system as part of the regulatory mechanisms on carbon emissions and air quality control. The defense lawyer representing former Lepelle Northern Water CEO Phineas Lekhodi has argued that delays in the corruption and fraud trial against his client are a witch hunt. And police in South Korea have launched a probe into the encrypted messaging platform Telegram on suspicion that it is helping to spread deep fake pornography. And those are your headlines. A full news update coming up 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and Grayston Drive eastbound in Sandton has a crash reported before Linden Street. In KZN, the N2 southbound slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction, and the M4 southbound has a lost load reported at Merebank, so you're asked to expect delays. In Cape Town, the N2 eastbound has a crash before Spine Road exit, the M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, let's talk sport to me for the first time today. What are we going to talk about?
Well, we're going to start off with the Paralympics. A very good afternoon to you and our listeners. Luzan Kutsia has claimed Team South Africa's second medal at the Paralympics with a bronze in the T11 1,500 meter final and a personal best. Kutsia clocked 4 minutes, 35.49 seconds in the final race to secure her place on that podium, and a big congratulations to her. Meanwhile, the first openly transgender transgender athlete in Paralympics history. She goes by the name of Valentina Petrillo, who's Italian, competed at the Paris Games today. The 50-year-old finished second in her heat of the T12 400 meters in a time of 58.35 seconds and also qualified for the semi-finals later on today. Moving on to rugby, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi is set to miss the second match against the All Blacks after sustaining a facial injury in the 31-27 victory at Ellis Park. Kolisi was forced off the pitch in the final quarter of the match after opting to continue playing despite sustaining the injury 10 minutes prior. And according to coach Rassie Erasmus, he did state that while he's not a medical doctor, he believed that it was a fracture, but the further assessment would need to be made. Meanwhile, moving on to cricket news. Actually, just staying with rugby, Springbok fly half Sasha Feinberg Mgomezulu, who contributed 16 points on Saturday, says that he feels that he still has a long way to make the number 10 his shirt his own. The 22-year-old's performance caught a lot of people's eyes since his debut in the green and gold. However, he feels that he still needs to grow into the jersey.
Not at all. I think it's definitely a good stepping stone. As you saw, even today, still a couple errors. I'm still learning, man. I'm not a complete 10 yet. You've got a guy like Andre who's a great number 10, and I'm actually just learning from him. I see him as our number 1 10. He's a great player, and I've got work to do still. The results help, and it progresses me a bit faster, and I feel like I'm growing in the number 10 jersey. But I'm not near a finished product yet, and I've got work to do still and a lot of things to fix.
Well, we definitely know that the future is bright when it comes to this 22-year-old. He contributed 16 points on Saturday. As much as he did make a lot of errors, however, his performance as a whole was definitely remarkable. But meanwhile, SA Rugby has apologized to the All Blacks and New Zealand Rugby over the sequence of events that led to the disruption of the haka. The closing moments of the haka were overlaid by music and fireworks, as well as a flyover by an A380 airliner, as pre-planned scheduling failed to be observed. SA Rugby CEO Rian Oberolza says that the SA Rugby was quite distressed by the breach of protocol and the apparent display of lack of respect it may have suggested. In football, Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker believes that they were deserving of their 2 wins over Mamelodi Sundowns in the MTN 8 semi-finals. A goal from striker Lehlogonolo Mojela proved enough to hand Stellies a 2-0 aggregate win and send them to face Pirates in the final. And just speaking after the game, Barker said that although Sundowns were a quality side, Stellies had proved once again that there were no slouches. Moving on to cricket, the highly anticipated third season of the Betway SA20, it's set to begin on the 9th of January with the final set for the 8th of February at Johannesburg's Wanderers Stadium. 2-time defending champion Sunrisers Eastern Cape set the stage, or set to start off with a clash against MI Cape Town in the opener at St. George's Park. Meanwhile, SA20 has partnered with CSA to launch the school tournament side of the competition, which will be streamed live, and it will feature 500 plus schools and over 1,000 plus matches. Absolutely great in terms of the progression of SA20. Then finally, in golf news, Rory McIlroy says that he's aiming to cut back on his tournament schedule in the future after a congested 2024 program, which will have seen him compete in 27 events by the end of the year. The 35-year-old was speaking after posting closing 66 to tie for 9th place at the Tour Championship in Atlanta. The 4-time major winner began the year strongly by winning the Dubai Desert Classic, and other highlights including taking victory at the Wells Fargo Championship in May. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Now, listen, before I let you go, so
Yes.
did you listen to Rassie, not Rassie, did you listen to Siya Kolisi's speech?
Afterwards,
After the game, yeah.
Thanking the South Africans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And?
Absolutely amazing. I think, first of all, he understood what it means for the Springboks to win over the All Blacks at Ellis Park, and also just thanking the South Africans for coming through to support them. It means a lot, and also I'm sure just having all those people at Ellis Park to support the Springboks really helped them to make a comeback from that 10-point lead by the New Zealanders. But that performance was absolutely
You're so
breathtaking.
very excited. That's all I can tell you.
Yes, I am.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll reflect on what I'd call the emotional intelligence of Siya Kolisi in the That's My Point feature, just coming up after 4 o'clock. So listen out for that. Okay.
Well,
right. More sport from you with some awards and prizes and medals maybe in an hour's time. Right.
Righty.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Okay, let's. So we'll chat, by the way, to Nozipho Shabalala, and she's going to talk about some of the reflections of the conversations that have taken place over Women's Month and like what she's heard, what she hasn't heard, what's missing, what's not missing, that sort of thing. So do not miss that, coming up in about 5 minutes time. Right, let's play some voice notes, and people have strong views on many issues, including the rugby.
Good day, Ashraf. It's Shubedi Paul Mudise here in Tempe military base in Bloemfontein. Yes, you are right. The rugby, they've got that patriotism spirit within themselves. But now when you come to the national, the ANC doesn't have this patriotism. It's open for illegal foreigners. Everyone can come in. Even that thing of Mrs. South African Universe, they'll take someone from out. What is that? Thank you.
Okay, that's what I don't know what you mean. It's like, what is that? Okay, my question is, how are we able to replicate the best in class, as we've seen with the Springboks, as well as what happened around transport for one game, across all sectors of South African society? Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Just what can we do to do things right? Number one, we need right attitude, positive attitude. Number two, we need people that are determined to do the work. Number three, we need skills, people who have skills. You know, it's painful to have a municipal manager who has failed matric be in charge of huge budget. So if we can get people with right skills, right attitude and determination, we can bring this country, make this country works.
Okay, that's one, and there's more, but I'll take some calls as well. So think about it. You can answer that question. How do we replicate what happened on Saturday in all sectors of South African society?
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Start to teach themselves English, speaking English the moment they enter the premises of the school, so that they beautify their tomorrow. You know, they mustn't listen to we, the parent of 80s, 70s and 60s, who always like trying to teach our children the pidgin English, and we always pushing for something which is very complicated, because we are the terrible generation. We always like want to fight them. So we mustn't take in those things into our children. They must just teach our children must teach themselves English by just communicating with English when they enter the premises of the school.
Okay, that's amongst the thoughts. Then there's a couple more comments that I pick up. Hi, let me see. Ashraf, it was the 13th of December. I received a call from the Mahikeng Labour to say they owe me 1,500 rands. Then they asked me to provide them with bank details. I've done so hoping I'll get the money, but still today I didn't get anything. When I checked with them, they say head office has locked the calls. Please pass this message on to the minister, from Freddie. Freddie, thank you. I'll get Keys to try and connect, because I think you're right. There are so many listener-driven issues that remain unresolved, okay, which then does suggest that we have to find a way to effectively jump the queue to get answers from them. Otherwise, too many people in the country will just not get what they need, which is the most basic answers to the questions that really matter to them. Here's another voice note.
Hi, Ashraf. This is Pity from Kabeja. With regards to Hamas and Israel, it is a speculation of what your guest has reported now. He's also just speculating. He does not have concrete evidence or substantial facts. So, to me, when I look at it, I don't care what happened before Hamas attacked Israel. The only thing I see is that Hamas attacked Israel first, and then now Israel is defending themselves. After that, there are no concrete or substantial evidence from both of them, both Israel and both Hamas, of what is happening currently in the Gaza Strip.
Well, I'll tell you what, your point is an interesting one, but it is so complex. Your point, like, I don't know what happened before. I'm going to suggest to you humbly that maybe Google it and find out, do the history of what happened in that region in terms of what happened before, not one day before or 1 week before, going back decades, and you may find a very, very different conversation around that. I think there's one more voice note I probably can take. Let's see if I can.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, we are complaining about uneducated municipal managers and the councillors. What about those in parliament, those who were sworn in recently? Did we see their CVs? Do they have qualifications? They are going to earn hundreds and thousands of taxpayers' money. Are they qualified? Are they qualified? That is the question. Did we see their CVs? Normally from Brixton.
Okay, let's pause for now in terms of calls or voice notes. But by the way, you can certainly tweet out as well the hashtag The National Pulse on the X platform as well as on Facebook, and add your thoughts, add your comments, whatever it is you feel that moves the National Pulse today. And while you're at it, what about a picture of yourself or your dial locked into SFM? Always gets a thumbs up from me when you do just that. We'll chat to Nozipho Shabalala in a moment around her reflection on the key conversations from Women's Month, right after this.
SAFM, setting the nationwide agenda daily.
Okay, we should be connecting now to Nozipho Shabalala. She is, amongst many other things, the conversation strategist. I must say that, we've engaged on many occasions, including having the privilege to, moderate and being part of an MC event at last year's BRIC. So I haven't seen you in a year, Nozi. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Really, really excited to be on the National Pulse with you.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you're on and you raise what you raise, the pulse rate of the nation will be ticking over. I have no doubt about that. Okay. Now, what we've done, just to give you the audience context here, is like once in a while we'll have these thought leader conversations and we get someone who just raise issues that are important to them. And I thought we'll pick your brain, and you said, hold it, let's talk about some of the key takeouts from Women's Month that's just ended. So thanks for giving off that time. So let's start with that. First things first. I mean, you have a position in terms of, the oft-repeated question, Women's Month. Is it working? Yes, no. What's your answer?
Well, I really think that the decision to demarcate and allocate entire month to conversations that are important to the lived experiences of South African women is very, very important. I think the question of whether it's working or not depends on what did we set out to do in this month. And my sense is that we set out to change the lived experiences of women. And I think the conversational spaces that we're opening up in this process are getting us there, but we're not there yet. And that's because we've got to probably still do quite a bit of work in terms of translating the eventing posture of Women's Month into a strategic conversational space where things can really change.
So certainly that there are many, many events. I mean, we know that, right? Large events, small events, conversations on radio, on television. So that awareness is massive, right? How would you measure that, firstly? Because, I mean, that's really one of the issues you've raised, right? How do you measure whether these events and these conversations on air actually serve the purpose? And maybe we don't even know what the purpose would be, right?
Yeah, well, you'll know that, Ashraf, one of my favorite things I like talking about is this idea that conversation is the birthplace of action. And it's quite important to hold conversation and action in the same sentence, because if we don't, then we're just in the business of sort of circling around in talk shops and nice events. And then the actions never come out of that. One of the measures for me is to actually track different strands of conversation and try to understand how has this conversation evolved from when we first put it on the table to where it is now. So as an example, we've been having the access to funding for women conversation for as long as I can remember. And I think we are making progress, but not fast enough, in the sense that when I started in the moderating space about a decade or more ago, that conversation was still about just awareness, like where do women go to access funds? Which are the institutions? Which programs are being run by both public and private sector and so on? I find myself now listening increasingly to panelists putting pressure on investors, on lenders, and saying, what percentage of your resource pool is being allocated to women? And actually, we want preferential procurement when we're talking public sector conversations. And so you're seeing the evolution from just an awareness around funding to putting pressure to making sure that the funding is actually aligned with the strategic outcomes we're looking for as a country. So for me, that is an example of definitely making progress. And maybe one last comment on this, there are also examples of when we've gone back. If you look at just the broad transformation conversation, the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation, I'm not hearing progress beyond how many women do we have represented. We're still quoting the same stats when we're talking about the number of women who are sort of like heading up JSE-listed companies, as an example. That's a stagnant conversation. If you track for the last decade, the kind of insights that are surfacing from there, it looks as if we're standing stock still.
So why are we standing still? I mean, it's obviously the conversations that are being had in these halls on air. I mean, these are bright people, and I'm talking about women and men who may well engage with them as well. So if we're still asking the same questions as if that's the only issue to raise, what does that say about us?
Well, I think it says two things, Ashraf. The first one is that there's a very real disconnect between conversations and actions, as I've alluded to. And so to some extent, we're having conversations for conversation's sake. Every company must be seen to have a Women's Day event. And so we quabble up a couple of speakers, we get an MC/moderator, we do some nice branding, and we put it out there. The second one is actually the one that worries me the most. And that is, we can sometimes fall into the trap of conversations being very performative. So what I mean by this is that instead of, if you think about a spectrum, and on the one hand, we have performative conversations, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have consequential conversations that move and change things. The performative conversation is when we're coming onto stage and it's a PR exercise. Everybody's scripted. We know what we're saying. We're not really interested in what happens once the MC says, thank you very much, you can descend off stage. We've had our 5-10 minutes of sound bites on the stage. We've gotten our social media reels that we're now going to go and post. And unfortunately, the business of conversations always is going to run the risk of falling into a performative space unless there is somebody who's very intentional about ensuring that conversations are a conduit and a catalyst for strategic outcomes.
So it's such an interesting thought you bring up. So that's somebody that you talk about who's intentional. Should that somebody be the panelists? Should it be the panelists or the organizations that the panelists represent? Should it be the moderator, program director like yourself or myself or whoever else? Who should ensure that the narrative changes?
The answer to that is all of the above. And it starts off with the hosting organization. And the tone that you set as the hosting organization already in the language, in the way you prepare, the way you invite your panelists, in the way you prepare your panelists, the process around the questions, the amount of risk and courage and bravery you want to build into those questions, the amount of leeway that you want to give to the moderator to actually ask real questions and not the ones that are just PR affirmed. It starts with the host. And once that invitation is given, it can be accepted and multiplied by the panelists, by the moderators, and even the audience in how they show up with questions in that conversation. As audience members, we have the ability also to ensure that the conversational space is true and authentic and not allow ourselves to sit through what we can see is a performance of well-known people getting their annual soundbite so that it can be ticked off as done.
The power of the soundbite. Now, up to now, often when we talk about that, we look at political leadership, and they would say, well, they're accountable to the electorate who votes them in power or out of power every 5 years. When it comes to, again, these typical panelists and audiences outside the political space, who holds them to account? In all the things we've spoken about above, if I can say that, who's going to hold them to account based upon the brief that we've agreed upon, and then people choose not to raise them?
I think it's such a brilliant question, because I think that ability to hold leaders and thought leaders to account is actually something that's missing, and we then have and the flow of influence of who's got the power to shape the conversation, to build the conversation. We're actually not even sure what direction that arrow flows. But one thing that I can offer is that in organizations where the leader understands the power of conversational leadership and understands the power of using the science of conversation for strategic breakthrough, they would hold their teams and anybody who steps onto a stage representing their organization to making sure that they understand the mandate of where this organization is as a corporate citizen and a global citizen, and what this corporate stands for, the voice of that corporate, and because you then have these, you have these measures in place or trackers in place, you can actually hold people accountable to say, this is the messaging that we're going to be taking out to the world. This is how it aligns to who we are and who we aspire to be as an organization, and the role that we're playing in creating a better world. You see this a lot, Ashraf, when you come to big conversations like the Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah. Corporates have their marching orders in terms of what is that particular organization's aligned to, which SDG, which sub-target, what is the messaging, how does that translate back to the strategy? And until we begin to do that work a lot more intentionally, we'll just have the most well-spoken person in any organization stepping up and taking the microphone and being the star of the show.
I think it's so important because maybe I'm going to do this as well intentionally to say, advise, we're not even talking of government here, looking at, big businesses to say, hold it, once we get the panelists and the audience to commit to certain ideals and action plans coming out of that conference, then they must follow up to ensure that, hold it, we've got this charter that's been created. Now let's see what we're going to do about it as part of a broader organization to measure that year on year. So, okay, that one point well made. In terms of the overall theme of Women's Month, I would think it's set up by government. But do you get a sense that that theme is moving? It doesn't fire up the imagination in the way the Springbok rugby team's winning, where immediately you get a shift. And we're not seeing that with regard to Women's Month, right?
So it's a good and a bad thing, and a yes and a no thing, and I was at the stadium on Saturday, so I have a visceral feeling almost of what you're referring to. I think on the one hand, there could be a lot of benefit that comes from shaping the national focus of a particular year. So in the same way we have International Women's Day, which is, of course, on the 8th of March, if I'm not mistaken. where there's always a global focus on what is the big issue that we are focusing on for women as the world, and how do we bring all our leadership capabilities to bear on that. I think there's a lot of value in that. But having said that, I am not necessarily against the decentralization of the conversation, because women have such different facets of their lived experience, and you want to create the space for example, women in finance to have a conversation that gives them the depth, because the entire program is really looking at the different financial instruments that can be leveraged for the advancement of women. At the same time, there's nothing wrong within a different corner of the country having a conversation about women and wellness, because that's an entirely different space that you would create for that conversation. So I think we can do both, and Ashraf, I think we can pull the strings a little bit tighter to bring a bit of a national focus, and actually have our government own that conversation throughout the month, but whilst at the same time retaining enough flexibility for different conversational spaces to pop up organically to speak to the needs of what women really want to engage on.
Okay, ironically, we're coming up to news time, so I'm going to ask you for a soundbite answer on this one. What about the role of what about the role of the men in the room?
Must be included. That is my soundbite. Women cannot begin to realize systemic change if half the system is missing. And that's why we have to be intentional about including men in these conversations. Yes, we need to still manage to make sure that the space remains psychologically safe and doesn't get dominated by men, and women's voices don't get drowned out, but exclusion is not the way to go.
Okay, maybe just the last thing. Coming out of this year's Women's Month, is there one incident or impactful moment that you'd like to share that you're aware of?
Actually, yes. I mean, one of the things that stood out for me this year was the power of the intergenerational conversation. I had the experience of this with a newspaper publication that was hosting a conversation on women in the energy sector, and it was relevant because of the just energy transition. It was relevant because of the intentionality around including women in the space, but it was even more powerful because the women who were participants in this industry 20, 25 years ago, who've done the work of breaking down the barriers, were able to symbolically pass on the baton conversationally in that conversation, speaking about what does it take to stay in the industry and to make a difference in the industry. And that really stood out for me as an incredibly powerful intergenerational conversation.
Well, I've put down a piece about intergenerational conversations or mentorship, reverse mentorship, which I probably need to share on another platform some other time, because I think it's that important. But our time is up, but it doesn't mean our mission is up. Nozipho Shabalala, great chatting to you as always. Feel free to tweet out some of the thoughts that you've got. We certainly will share this as a podcast ASAP. And it's always a privilege to chat to you and getting your thoughts as part of this leadership conversation. There we are. The Real Nozi. You can follow her on social media, the conversation strategist, Nozipho Shabalala. What do you make of that? Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock.
Thanks, Ashraf. The top story is at 4. New regulations for SA carbon emissions, and South Korea probes the messaging platform Telegram. A very good afternoon. Government has put in place a stringent licensing system as part of the regulatory mechanisms on carbon emissions and air quality control. The Environment Department revealed this at the annual gathering of the Air Quality Governance Lekgotla. The 3-day conference is being held virtually. Deputy DG at the department, Ashraf Garda, says strides have been made towards ensuring cleaner air over the years.
Effective regulation. We have put in place the current licensing system coupled with minimum emission standards and obligatory reporting. This in itself a massive achievement. It is a massive achievement and is the core of our efforts to address air pollution. We are building on decades of experience internationally. We need to improve our ability to effectively monitor compliance and undertake enforcement actions where necessary.
The defense lawyer representing former Lepelle Northern Water CEO Phineas Lekhodi has argued that delays in the corruption and fraud trial against his client are a witch hunt. The matter has been reinstated on the court roll after being withdrawn 2 years ago. Lekhodi and his co-accused are facing corruption charges over a 45 million rand tender. His lawyer, Sikwavulimu Maano, says the postponements are aimed at delaying justice.
It's a very, very weak case that they have tried to. It is evident from what you have just mentioned now that it was withdrawn and then brought back, withdrawn again, reinstated again. It was 3 times. You can see that the tactics of the state is just a witch hunt.
The KZN Transport Department has started identifying some of those who died in separate road incidents over the weekend. It's emerged that 4 Lesotho nationals were among the 12 people killed in the crash between Greytown and Moy River. 9 occupants in a bakkie and 3 in an SUV were killed in the head-on collision on Saturday afternoon. A couple and their teenage son were killed in the SUV. Their 12-year-old son was the only survivor. The department says it will approach the Lesotho High Commission in Pretoria about the repatriation of the remains of the Lesotho nationals. Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen has expressed confidence in the relations between South Africa and China. President Cyril Ramaphosa is on a state visit to China and has met with his counterpart Xi Jinping. The two leaders have signed agreements that will increase trade between the two nations. Speaking to our news desk in China, Steenhuisen, who is part of a government delegation there, says their visit to Beijing will yield positive results for South Africa.
We've got 3 great signings today that are going to be game changers for the South African agricultural sector and really start to bear fruit, market access, improvement on current agreements, and very exciting.
And the police in South Korea have launched a probe into the encrypted messaging platform Telegram on suspicion that it is helping to spread deep fake pornography. According to police, a total of 88 deepfake sex crime reports were filed between last Monday and Thursday, and 24 individuals have been identified as suspects so far. The BBC's John Mackenzie has more.
Hundreds of these chat rooms have been discovered on Telegram, where students were sharing photos of women and girls they knew and using AI software to convert them into fake pornographic images. Activity on Telegram is notoriously difficult to police. Now Seoul's National Police Agency has said it's looking to follow France's lead and investigate Telegram itself. Last week, French authorities charged the app's founder, Pavel Durov, over his role in enabling alleged criminality on the app. Police here want to talk to French investigators before deciding how to proceed.
The top story at 4 o'clock, government has put in place a stringent licensing system as part of the regulatory mechanisms on carbon emissions and air quality control. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
In sports this hour, Springboks hopeful that skipper Kolisi will face All Blacks after facial injury, and Team South Africa wheelchair tennis duo set to rewrite history at the Paris Paralympic Games. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Solomon Mhlangu Drive in Pretoria has delays between Boeing Street and Kadusnik Avenue. In Sandton, the M1 has a crash reported between Woodmead Drive and Marlborough Drive, and Grayston Drive eastbound has a crash reported before Linden Street. In KZN, the M7 has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions toward the Bel Air Road, Wakesley Road Junction, and the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive is queuing at Voortrekker Road, the M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound slow moving towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Cervical cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among South African women. This is heartbreaking because cervical cancer is highly preventable through HPV vaccination and regular pap smears. Pap smears are a bit uncomfortable but painless. doesn't take too long and detect abnormal cells before they become cancerous. Women aged 21 and older should book a pap smear at a Cancer Association of South Africa care center. Call 0800 22 6622 for info. This is an SABC supported initiative.
Comoros and the Gambia have a huge clash for 90 minutes in the AFCON qualifier. Both nations are optimistic for the significant 3 points. Yet the question remains, who wants it the most? This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Comoros up against the Gambia on Wednesday, 4 September at 5 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So let's talk about Siya Kolisi. Don't you just rate the guy's emotional intelligence and his emotional maturity? I can tell you now, I have watched many captains of big sporting clubs and teams and nations around the world, and very few speak the way he speaks, really. Okay, what am I saying? You know, the Boks won. They beat the All Blacks in that thriller at Emirates Ellis Park over the weekend, right? So how many players in the world are able to use a post-victory interview to highlight not just the significance of the victory, but to highlight the plight of the homeless, the support of the Boks, the issues of gender-based violence in his home nation, and reflecting on South Africa's democracy and the fact that not everyone is free, all in a very short interview. That suggests that this person is intentional, he knows his power, and he will deliver the power of the platform in a way very few politicians can do with the type of honesty and maturity he does. And I'm suggesting that Siya Kolisi's ability to understand that his role is beyond just 15 players chasing a ball with a funny bounce, right? He gets his purpose. He gets it, that his level of emotional intelligence is so rare amongst leaders in all sectors of society, just about anywhere in the world. Let me explain. Let me give you the facts. This is what he said. Okay, he said, I'll rush it. Dankie, thank you. Honestly, on behalf of the team, we just want to say thank you so much for your support, not just for tonight, but you've carried us through so many battles. And us as a team, we play for a lot. But you, the people of South Africa, are our number one motivation. You give us the motivation each and every single day. We appreciate you. And everyone cheering us as we were driving in the bus today, there were so many different people from different walks of life. Homeless people seeing us and jumping up and down, people who can't be here today. So we say thank you, and we represent everyone. We appreciate you, and please don't stop when things are tough. Please carry on supporting us. We can't do it without you. It is 30 years of freedom, and I want to say congratulations to South Africans. But we still know there are many people who are still not free. Hopefully, the next celebration we celebrate is that of women who are free from gender-based violence. So let's celebrate 30 years, but there are so many people who are still not free. This is the captain of a team that plays sport that is so rough. If you come out of there alive, you're like, well done. And if you come out not injured, there's something wrong with you. And Siya Kolisi, by the way, was injured again on Saturday. That's the norm. That's the level of emotional maturity I want to hear from all our leadership along the length and breadth of our country. That's the type of people who will lead us to building a champion nation. Well, that's my point. What's yours?
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Okay, let's give me your thoughts, by the way. So that's my opinion on Siya Kolisi and his emotional intelligence. What's yours? You can WhatsApp us, voice notes, text as well. 0614 104 107. You can call in 086 000 2032, and you can also post on social media. And by the way, of course, you know that we've got this new The National Pulse WhatsApp channel. If you'd like to join the channel, just WhatsApp 0614 104 107 with a simple message, join channel. And Fusani will certainly make sure you get up there very, very quickly. Now, while we're talking about one leader, the overall leader of our country, President Ramaphosa, well, he's got his own game to play. He's in China on a state visit aimed at cementing South Africa's relations with the Asian superpower. So part of that, of course, is speaking with his counterpart. And the big question ahead of South Africa hosting the G20 summit next year is what can he get out of it, and how can we then maximize the leveraging of that summit? So let's get more about it with Sophie Mokoena, the SABC International News Editor. Sophie, good chatting to you. I trust you're on the trip, so it's good evening for you, right? Almost good night.
Yes, it's late here in Beijing, China. Yes, it's late.
Well, I appreciate you indulging us on your close to midnight time, right? First of all, let's get some context. Why this trip? Why is it important?
It is quite important, as you pointed out, that this is the Asian tiger, and you know that it is the second largest economy in the world. It is our largest trading partner as South Africa. It is also a largest trading partner of the continent in general. You know that this is a member of the BRICS family, a country that has always supported the South-South, and therefore a country that has stood firm in terms of supporting South Africa, even at the multilateral level, at the United Nations, when South Africa has put forward resolutions. Currently, they are also supporting a request or a push for Africa to have 2 seats at the Security Council. So it is a partner to South Africa, but a partner to the continent in general.
Okay, so some of the specifics that gets, maybe you can use the right word for us. Does it get discussed, debated, adopted, agreed? First of all, what would that be? And what are the actual issues they talk about?
This is a follow-up to the discussions in South Africa last year. You'd recall during the BRICS summit, ahead of the summit, President Xi Jinping was on a state visit in South Africa, and major announcements were made in terms of trade and investment, but also assisting South Africa on the challenge of energy supply or electricity, including supporting South Africa at the multilateral level, as I pointed out. Now, today we saw the two countries signing 8 agreements. The important ones, not that others are not so important, but I'm looking at the current challenges. One on agriculture. Food security is quite important. And the South African farmers would like to export agricultural products in China in terms of large quantities or large volumes. And that will contribute in the strengthening of the agricultural sector as a sector that creates jobs in South Africa. The second one is around public works and infrastructure to help South Africa to address the challenges of the infrastructure. When you look at our rail system, and you know that transport is the lifeblood of commerce, when you look at our ports that are congested and there are challenges, when you look at issues such as the electricity infrastructure as well, in terms of the renewables, even though China is still also using coal or fossil fuel. And therefore, I think for me, those were the main issues I think that can assist to drive the economy in South Africa. But you also had agreements on issues related to science and technology. And therefore, I think it was all about how do you help South Africa to address the economic challenges and using those different sectors.
And then to circle back to what may happen at the G20 summit, I mean, certainly South Africa would want to, hosting it, would want to be seen up in the best possible light. But at the same time, there's this ongoing discussion about the new form of colonialism, which is not, soldiers taking over countries, but economic colonialism where trade agreements engender a complete dependence on another country. What are your thoughts about that sort of conversation, particularly with reference to China?
I have been asking that question to Chinese diplomats, including the ambassador of China in South Africa. Last month, I had a one-on-one with him. That was my main focus in terms of how do you help the African continent to industrialize and not just take these raw materials, but help South Africa to get the value chain correct. In other words, they are able to industrialize and we create more jobs and you get a better value for your product. Secondly, the issue of debt trap. You know that many countries on the continent, the poorer ones, because there has been lots of work done by China in terms of infrastructure on the continent in forms of loans. Some of them they can't pay back. And now it is a problem. Sometimes the debt is way above their GDP. And now I did ask that question. So China says they have had discussions with South Africa to close the trade deficit. In other words, it shouldn't be skewed in favor of China. And therefore, the issue of beneficiation and building of the industries in South Africa is what they will henceforth embark on or continue to strengthen. The second issue is the issue of the debt trap. They are writing off some of the debt in terms of other countries. As you know, on Wednesday and Thursday, you'll have FOCAC. I expect Xi Jinping to respond to that because that's been seen as colonization of the African continent. So we have asked those hard questions. I personally have done it. Even the reports, I kept referring to those two critical issues. And the president today, again, when he was speaking, he spoke about that trade deficit. And therefore, I think we are not going to stop to ask that hard question. And China has responded. But I think what is critical is to see the practical response in terms of those issues raised by Africans. And they are correct to raise that sharply.
Okay, we're coming up to a break, so short answer with this one. I understand John Steenhuisen amongst the grouping that is there. How significant is that?
It is quite significant because you know the foreign policy of DA and years leadership of DA, how they have characterized China, socialism and communism. So him being here, shaking hands with leaders of the Communist Party of China in their capacity as ministers. You know that those ministers of China, including Xi Jinping, are the leadership of the Communist Party of China. So it is quite significant. But the other question is the same will happen during the BRICS summit because they will then have to accompany the president, some of them, to the BRICS summit in Russia, and they will have to shake hands with Putin as they did shake hands with President Xi Jinping today. And therefore, the issue of foreign policy, it's clear that
Let's wait for that BRICS summit. Looking forward to that. Yesterday's friends, today's enemies, or vice versa. Sophie McWenna, thank you.
Here he comes. Hello, guys. You're so dramatic. Hey, bro, it's not me. It's the extra styling kit. The leather seats with the red finish. It's the tow bar, all coming standard with my red Isuzu badge. Wow, now that is extra.
Why be standard when you can get the all-new Isuzu D-Max X-Rider from just 8,742 Rand. Prime less 3.5%, 0% deposit, 40% balloon, and 72 months to pay. Get yours today. Finance is subject to approval. Isuzu Finance, a product of Westbank, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Welcome to the team, Andile.
Thank you.
What will be your first order of business?
Well, ensuring our greatest assets are taken care of.
Our vehicle fleet?
No, our employees. You see, I want them to feel confident in our company's employee benefits, and Old Mutual Corporate is perfect for that. They take care of everything, from retirement benefits to health and group risk solutions, consulting, and more.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, so lots more to come. By the way, as part of the feature we have around 10 to 5, we'll be talking about mentorship and looking forward to that. Certainly mentorship with regard to business and financial support. So that's an important one. But here's an interesting one. We all know about Bayanda Walaza, right? And he's, But what about the other names? Johannes Morepe and Naledi Makhatsu. Now, these are names of young South African athletes that have certainly made their mark in Lima at the Under-20 World Athletics Championships, right? All three have one thing in common, not just that they perform well on that global stage, but they've all come through the Hoërskool Vorentoe sports program. In my best Afrikaans, Vorentoe means moving ahead. Maybe I should have considered becoming an athlete if I went to that school. The question is, what's the connection? So let's find out with Opa Maruping, who's the head of sport at Hoërskool Vorentoe. Opa, appreciate your time. You're connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Right, so these three athletes, is there a connection that comes back to people like yourself, or is it complete coincidence?
Ashraf, it's not complete coincidence. Vorentoe High School, it's been sort of an athletic school for over 20 years. So we go to the deep rural area, the farms, the townships, and we recruit these athletes that comes from disadvantaged areas, families, and we bring them to Vorentoe to come and give them academic scholarship and athletic scholarship and just mentor them and see if they come all right in life as far as academic and athletics.
So, in doing that, I mean, are you saying, and there are examples of all schools that are academic, but they also have a certain slant. For example, I think Grey College would be rugby, or Paarl Gymnasium would be something similar. Like Kes, for example, in Johannesburg would be very much a cricketing type of school. Do you say that outside of academics, you positioned yourself as a running school?
Yes, if I go back, this program actually, it started, like I said, 20 years ago. And what we do is we attend district championships, we attend provincial championships, we attend national championships. And we scouted these athletes. If I remember, 2012, Vorentoe has won the Development School of the Year. And the support that we have actually made this possible, it goes back to the late Honorable Mackenzie Stofile, who was the Minister of Sport, who actually supported the program financially when it kind of started.
Okay, so it's been part of the agenda ever since. Where is the school based, and then how easy or difficult is it for you to attract these potential athletes, because they're still young boys, at that time, to come to your school?
The school is based in Johannesburg. It's about 2.5 or 3 kilometers from your office is there, the SABC. Just behind, we share one fence with UJ, and then between UJ and Helen Joseph Hospital.
I promise you, if I waved and you waved, we could check each other out. But I'm just 6 floors up. That's the difference. Okay. And then your ability, to sustain yourself, to be able to attract these athletes.
When I look at it, Johannes, like, for example, you can mention Joy Wailaza, Naledi, Johannes Morepe. It goes back to the Palula twins. It goes back to Mapaseka Makanya. It goes back to Morendo Davana. It goes back to, and luckily, Foreign to High School has been so lucky to have a support of the staff members to coach, a support of the entire SMT, the principals, the deputy principal and stuff like that. But to identify these kids, it needs a different eye. You don't just go to the provincial champs and take number 1, or you don't just go to nationals and take number 1. That means we don't have a room to develop. What we have done before, we look into number 8, 9, 10. It's when we get number 3, 4, 5, or number 2 and 1, it's a bonus, but we're not looking into that. We want to develop. We want to bring a kid when they are not national champions and make them national champions. And that's what we have done. Okay.
So how do you identify these kids? Meaning, I think of a scouting system like in other sports. The network has to be spread out wide, right? Who does the identifying and then brings them back or have a conversation with them to convince them to come to the school?
Ashraf, most of the years I've done the scouting. We have driven to the Eastern Cape, we have driven to Limpopo, Northwest, Mpumalanga. If there is an athlete, we go and meet with the parents. We convince the parents that Forendu is the school to be. We give them our track record. We like, as I speak, there are about 10 athletes that are living and working and studying in the U.S. that went through high school Forendu athletic program. So as the parents agree, then we bring them to Forendu. We look after them with the support that we got, like I mentioned before, Minister Stofile. Then after Minister Stofile, it was KPMG. After KPMG, it was Maureen Robert. And a year and a half ago, Maureen Robert got into financial difficulties, and they pulled out of a Forendu program. As things are, we are losing athletes. The program is in limbo. The program is going to shut down if there is no any alternative. There is no plan B.
Okay, but that's almost ridiculous, isn't it? How is it possible that your program that's now producing an Olympic medalist and in under 20 championships, 100 meters and 200 and more could actually be in danger of shutting down? It contradicts everything we've been talking about, right? We're on to news time already, so just a quick thought. What's your plan of action?
Ashraf, right now, Forendu's back is against the wall. And I would just like to thank Ms. Stacy for putting all the information up there in social media. We trying to see if somebody can come and say, hey, let's continue with this program. Let's do what is necessary.
Wow.
The school that has produced 450 plus medals for Gauteng province, it's sad when you say those medals won't be coming for Gauteng province. I'm talking about school athletics and PGA athletics.
Let's leave it at that. I'm sure Gayton McKenzie is someone who has to be tweeted to directly. I think that would be the most obvious one. We have a new Minister of Sport, but not just him. Businesses listening to us. Well, let me throw this out to you as the audience. Really, come on. Can we ensure that World School Forendu is able to deliver the type of top-class athletes that they do now without having to worry about funding? You have an idea? What about just sending me a text message anyway? Or you can tweet me on social media as well. 0614 104 107. Here's the news headlines. Here's Madupi.
Thanks, Ashraf, and good afternoon. In your headlines, Public Works Minister Dean McPherson says he has met Chinese business people who are willing to invest in infrastructure here in South Africa. The government has put in place a stringent licensing system as part of the regulatory mechanisms on carbon emissions and air quality control. And Sweden's public health minister says children under the age of 2 should not be allowed to watch screens, be it television or cell phones. And those are your headlines. Kolo has your full update at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg queuing towards Crown Interchange. The R24 eastbound in Kempton Park has a crash near Barbara Road. The N12 westbound in Eldorado Park has a crash before Klipspruit Valley Road exit. Grayston Drive eastbound in Sandton has a crash before Linden Street. And Solomon Mhlangu Drive in Pretoria has delays between Boeing Street and Kadusnik Avenue. In KZN, tomorrow on the N3, blasting reported between Pietermaritzburg and Ashburton from 2:30 until 3, the road will be closed. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound has a crash reported after the M7 highway. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Hartwell Drive is queuing at Voortrekker Road. The N1 outbound slow moving towards Jip de Jager Drive. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The M5 southbound slow moving towards Racecourse Road. And the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound slow moving towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Well, after my Siya Kolisi comments at the top of the hour as part of my That's My Point feature about his emotional intelligence and maturity, we have a Siya Kolisi story of sport, I would think. Go ahead, to me.
Absolutely. The Springboks are said to be assessing Captain Siya Kolisi's availability for the clash against the All Blacks in Cape Town as they delayed their team announcement until Thursday. Now, Kolisi suffered a suspected fractured cheekbone after being tackled by All Blacks flank Sam Cane. Though Kolisi tried to battle on, he was substituted at the start of the final quarter. And Springbok assistant coach Don Human says that they're still hopeful that Kolisi will be recovered on time for Saturday. So we are waiting with bated breath. Meanwhile, Kolisi could finally seal his return to the Sharks after an American businessman reportedly put his hand up and offered to pay the transfer fee demanded by French club Racing 92. Kolisi's return to South Africa seemed to have reached a stalemate after it was reported that the Sharks were not willing to put up around £726,000, which is around 17 million rand, to buy him out of his contract. And now, very interesting with this American businessman saying, listen, I will pay for him to go to the Sharks. Why he's so interested in him coming back to South Africa, we don't know, but we'll definitely keep you up to date with this developing story. Then in football, Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce says that midfielder Cassius Mailula's loan move to Wydad Athletic Club has put him back in contention for selection in the team. The 23-year-old has reunited with Rulani Mokoena, who once gave him a chance in his breakout season with Mamelodi Sundowns' first team and in Morocco. And the move has pleased Bruce, who admitted that he is a fan of the young forward. And talking about Bafana, they have officially started their preparations for the upcoming AFCON qualifiers, and Bruce says that they are going to play the matches with full intentions of maximum points. South Africa face Uganda on Friday at 6 p.m. and then they play South Sudan next week, Tuesday. Meanwhile, Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero says that the selection of the club's number one goalkeeper, Sipho Chain, and midfielder Talent Mbata and some of their teammates to the latest Bafana squad is a vote of confidence in the team's recent performances. Now, Chain and Mbata have been selected to the Bafana team that went to camp this morning and will play against Uganda and South Sudan in the AFCON qualifiers this week.
Well, I think to be in the national team in the end is a consequence of, for each and every player, is a consequence of the team doing well. Especially when you speak about big teams like Orlando Pirates. When we are performing as a collective, I think individuals gets those type of rewards. Right now we have a good number of players in the national team. I think actually the national team coach expressed himself many times in the recent years that talking about collectives and teams that are doing well as a collective and teams that are not doing well as a collective as well. It's helping them to do the selection.
Meanwhile, Kaizer Chiefs are reportedly going ahead with their pursuit of left-back Bradley Cross after getting the green light from coach Nasruddin Nabi. It's understood that Chiefs will trigger the player's buyout clause, which is believed to be in the region of 3 million rand, following an agreement in principle with the Golden Arrows to get it over the line. Then in Paralympic news, Team South Africa's Donald Rampadi says that they're ready to rewrite history when they play for bronze and the wheelchair tennis quad doubles with his fellow partner Lucas Tale on Wednesday. Now, the duo will face Brazil's Maina Silva and Leandro Pena as they chase for the crucial win at the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. And Rampadi says that they're looking forward to securing a win and adding a medal for Team South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, we're very excited about us playing for the bronze. We're very aware that this is the first time South Africa quad division have like doubles in the Paralympics. So we know very well that us clinching the bronze medal will be so it's going to be a history. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. Definitely, we do want to bring it home from the bottom of our heart. So looking forward to it.
Wishing them nothing but the best with regards to that one for Wednesday. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now.
Here's a question to you.
Yeah.
Serious question. Siya Kolisi, can you see him owning or heading up a provincial franchise the way that David Beckham has done?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think he's got it in him.
Done? No arguments? Goodbye. Let's get moving. Which club would he buy? Can you just imagine? Think of who would you want him to have as your leader? Think about that one. Okay, more sport in an hour.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's Elimination Week and the bottom 6 must bake their ultimate cookie and milkshake pairing. It's a match made in heaven, but will they perfect their flavor combinations under pressure? Take part in the weekly viewers competition and stand a chance of winning a classic stand mixer to the value of 10,000 Rand. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's now get to the markets with Makwe Masilela, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Good chatting to you as always. So we've got two things, Bidvest yearly results, and then as always a check on local and global markets, Makwe.
Afternoon to Ashraf and to listeners. Yes, Bidvest, they continue to benefit from their diversified portfolio. 5 out of 7 divisions reported profit growth, except for commercial products and automotive. They're selling their bank and FinGlobal. And the guys increased their geographic footprint by making 11 acquisitions. That led to return on funds employed to moderate by 2.6% to 37%, and return on invested capital by 6.9% to 16.1%. Revenue grew by 6.7%. Profits as normalized headline earnings per share, that up 4.7%, just like their total dividends. And the US and Canada, Ashraf, are closed for holiday today, so making liquidity to be thin, while wins 4 of the far-right parties in German state elections added a fresh layer of political uncertainty. Investors are expected to put money in less loved value stocks and small caps, which are expected to benefit from lower interest rates. and global equities began September on the back foot after months of gains as China efforts to support their struggling economy is showing no signs of positive impact. Oil prices are down on expectations of higher OPEC Plus production starting in October, while signs of sluggish demand when it comes to China and US raised concerns about future consumption growth. Brent crude is down 0.2% at $76, and a firmer dollar is weighing on the yellow metal, but traders are waiting for US job numbers to firm their bets on the size of US interest rate cuts. We see gold is down 0.2% at 2,498, platinum is flat at 924, Europe is flat and the JSE is down 0.5%. The rand just weakened 0.2% against the US dollar is now 17.84, 23.44 to the pound and 19.24 to the euro.
Right, got that. Thank you so much for that, Mark. We'll have another update from the markets in about 45 minutes or so. Do not miss that. Right, I think I need to take some of your calls. So here's a question. Ashraf, what about that mining magnate, Patrice? That mining magnate, Patrice, getting involved with that high school. Okay, I got that, and I think the point has been made. Here's another one from Brian Mabaye saying, Ashraf, it's so sad when the Springboks are playing. We are in a coma situation. Just peaceful, but we know that every time we come out of the coma, we still have reality to face to improve our country as we take more of corruption and not innovation. From Brian. Brian, let me answer this one. You see, some people say, that's like a Kumbaya moment, just for the day. I think we got it wrong. It's not the Springboks' fault that they are the best in the world. It's also not their fault that they're able to instill a massive emotional drive from people across the nation, okay? It is the country's fault that we are unable to replicate that. That's where we must turn it around. So your point is valid insofar as not saying, when they do it, we fuss about it. It's like, actually, we want to fuss about every one of them, like these Olympic athletes, but we want to fuss about them when they go and do business in China. We want to fuss about an administrator. We want to fuss about an academic. We want to fuss about someone who's done something in archaeology. Across the board, we want to fuss about someone whose gold medal is because they've eliminated poverty in our country. That's the challenge that I'm talking about. How can we replicate what's emerged from the Springboks across all sectors of South African society? Right, further comments, Zakele in Cape Town. Hi.
How are you? Speaking to Zakele.
Yeah, good talking to you, Zakele. Go ahead, what's your point?
Yeah, Ashraf, I will say the following. Based on what Yakolisi just said after we've won the post speech that he made, it was very excellent and powerful. One, I will draw reference to this. Leadership. I believe in that certain leaders are born with it. And there are those leaders who just principled, who are principled, they read books and they apply the principle as is, but they fail to understand the dynamics on the ground. They fail to understand the real issues that are affecting people on the ground. You get so many people in leadership positions now, be it in government, private sector and whatnot, but they are not in touch with the reality on the issues that are affecting the people on the ground. And the way in which Siyakolisi crafted it and messaged it to almost everyone in the country, I think to me, he was also, out of breath for a moment, because people were like chanting her name, Siya from the stands. That moment, without even him speaking, the universe was speaking for him. And I can tell you that whatever followed from his mouth was wow. And I want to say this as I'm closing, that in the other sporting codes must go and have a meeting with the Springbok fraternity, be it from the coach, just the executive of Springbok, to say, Bafana, how can we emulate the same thing, the unity, the cohesion that you are actually having now? What is it that you are doing right, guys, that we are failing to do it right? Then you get the private schools. I think rugby from the grassroots level, they are getting it right. From the school
I
level,
agree with you. Okay, Zakir, I'm going to move on only because of time. I'm going to move on. Yeah, okay, quick one.
Point.
Yeah.
What happens to the white kids that are playing soccer on Wednesday. What happens to them when they're 18 and 19? Why they're not playing for Kaizer Chiefs, Sundowns, and other PSL teams? What happens to them at that particular age? That's a question maybe others can answer it. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
good. I can tell you now, I don't think there's as big an investment in school football, and I love football. Between cricket, football, rugby, first prize, football. I know what's happened in schools. There's nowhere near as big an investment, and that's got to be a SAFA issue. Rugby has to instigate the development at school level. SAFA needs to do the same thing. Zakela, thanks for that comment, right? Hassan Logat, good chatting to you. Hi.
Yes, Ashraf, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love the topic. I think that every time a youngster does well at school, following the last speaker, what the professional bodies do, they take the young person out of the area as if there's an infestation rather than an imagination of, brilliance there, that you should build that fountain that is existing there. So the kid who may be in Soweto, Orlando High, like Jomo and stuff like, they take them out and put them into some professionalized school, which is good. But why not replicate this in the townships? Have every school where there's a number of excellent kids, make that the school of excellence rather than creating schools of excellence at Grays or elsewhere.
Well, you're right. One of the biggest arguments I've had, and I've said it often on many platforms, is the best, including the Siya Kolisis that come to mind, and maybe the Hashim Amlas, ultimately they had to leave their local communities to go to a better school, a rugby school or a cricket school, to have excellence, and then they did progress. We know that. The question is, what has happened to those schools? Why can't we invest in those schools so that hundreds more would actually excel without leaving those schools? That, again, I think is an education stroke sports development problem that we haven't addressed in our country. That is why a township still looks like a township 30 years into democracy. Hassan, thanks for that call. Much appreciated. Right? Lots to consider on that. I'll tell you what, there's some of voice notes that I wish to play. Let's get them. Here's one.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hendricks, and I'm 11 years old. Every day after school, I watch the SAFM on the National Pulse, and I really love listening to Ashraf Garda.
Oh, that's very, very cute of you. I'll tell you what, one of the days, I don't know where you are, if you're ever coming close to the studios here in Johannesburg, give us a shout. Come with your family, come and say hello to the show, and we'll put you on here. I'd love to connect with you, because I think ultimately, as has been said by Nozipo earlier on, we also have to learn from young people. I'm absolutely up for learning about the energy of young people. So there we are, right? Okay, there's another call around the Springboks, and really I'm fascinated about this. And it's not just about other sports teams must learn from them. I think other institutions must learn from them. Seppo, let's get your thoughts. Hi.
Thanks, Ashraf, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks, Springboks, for bringing us joy for the last year or so. I think it's beautiful. But I watch these matches, and it's not fluid. There's almost like nail-biting, lucky. We need to be lucky to get through almost. I'm being critical of the sport because I love the sport. I don't know why. We got a win, but it wasn't a clean win. We got very defensive and fluid towards the end, but the 62 minutes were like atrocious. Same happened in the World Cup. I mean, we got through with sheer luck. Let's give them praise, but let's also tell them the truth that let's get better.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, let me say this much. Some of the greatest achievements in the world, not just in sport, in anything, there is an element of luck, but there's also resilience and grit in doing what you do, and then you deliver on the day. So, in fact, the fact that the Boks can win 3 successive World Cup knockout matches in 3 weekends by 1 point is either lucky, or it just shows incredible resilience to survive. And the same from coming back against the All Blacks, being down and out in the dead and coming back to effectively win it, I think is remarkable. Just staying with the sporting theme, here's Mamelodi Sundowns.
Hi, Ashraf. Really here in Kuma. Stellenbosch showed Mamelodi Sundowns that they are not just walkovers. Yeah, they showed them their colors. So Mamelodi Sundowns' sun is going down. The sun is setting gradually, and I wonder that guy Bramoro in Bloemfontein, how is he feeling now? Because he would be so boastful about his colorful Sundowns performing very well every time. Now the sun is setting.
The sun is setting.
Thanks, Willie and Kuma.
Well, there you are. You know, the Sundowns coach is off to Morocco, right? The original coach now. So there's a change, and people said, yeah, we don't have to worry about it. We'll just carry on winning. Well, there's a jolt for you, isn't it? Right, let's talk about leadership and growth, picking up from Naledi Pandor in a moment.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's Elimination Week and the bottom 6 must bake their ultimate cookie and milkshake pairing. It's a match made in heaven, but will they perfect their flavor combinations under pressure? Take part in the weekly viewers competition and stand a chance of winning a classic stand mixer to the value of 10,000 Rand. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right. One thing we've done is, this feature every day around this time, we have different aspects and we focus on personal growth, right? We're doing something rather different today because I had a chat with Naledi Pandor, Dr. Naledi Pandor, honorable, but she said that's out now and certainly not a minister any longer. We had a chat with her on Friday as part of the Friday Fireside Chat. Please listen to the podcast. It's up. You can go to the website, safm.co, you'll find the podcast. A fascinating 45-minute chat. Now, one of the things I asked her, this is one thing I want to bring up here, is I asked her, come on, give us a shout out to a young South African that we need to make a note of. And she said this.
Lunga did tell me you may ask this question. And it's a young woman who's a nuclear physicist. Her name has just gone from my head, but she's absolutely incredible. And she's currently in Vienna representing our country in an amazing conference on nuclear science.
Right, so at that time, Naledi Pandor, I couldn't quite remember the name, and then, of course, lots of people knew. There are very few nuclear physicists in our country. Easy to work out, young woman who it is, and Senamile Masango then tweeted, saying, and there's a lovely picture of herself, dressed in orange, really bold with multicolours, next to Naledi Pandor at a stadium in pink, right? And she said, I'm deeply honoured to be mentioned by the former Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, on SFM radio as a young South African, to be recognised as the nuclear physicist who represented our country in Vienna by such a respected leader is truly humbling. Totally agree. So that's a shout out from Naledi Pandor to Senamile Masango, and she's sort of done the reversed shout out as well. So we thought we'll play that. There's a few more sound bites that I want to just pick up on related to the same issue that we'll do. Let's do this in the meantime. Let's play some more comments around some of the big issues that we've been talking about today.
Good day, Ashraf and the SFM listeners. If the Springbok was a political party, it was going to unite us as South Africans, because this is the only brand that doesn't separate us based on color. It always symbolizes Ubuntu. It always symbolizes celebration because of their transformation on the team. It shows that we can do it despite of the different races. But we tend to talk heritage based on political accept where political leaders will talk history and division. Primer by Protea Glen. Thank you for the great show.
Much appreciated. Thank you for listening and really great. Well, I concur with so much of what you've just said, right? Now, one of the issues we had on that conversation with Naledi Pandor, her daughter, Aisha Pandor, called in and asked if she could ask her mother a question. So we did that, and she asked her, what are the things to her mummy that she's learnt being in Parliament all these years? And this is the answer.
Well, I think what I learned from my work, particularly in politics, was to understand policy formation and also to learn to deal with people who had very, very different ideas from you, and to engage with that without creating enmity or polarization that would divide public representatives or indeed our nation. I also learned to be better organized as a worker. I got to really understand the value of a diary. I began using a diary as an MP when I was a teacher. I was kind of locked into the school time and agenda. But with a multifaceted role in Parliament, I really had to be far better organized. And lastly, I learned how to find women's toilets, because there weren't many in Parliament when we first arrived there. And so, we had to agitate for women to be recognized as a presence in Parliament through creating many more facilities for women MPs.
I learned how to find the women's toilet. That almost sounds like the Siya Kolisi story of effectively highlighting a huge problem. It means it is clearly not that obvious, isn't it? And that changed around. All right, well, we'll play another soundbite regarding Naledi Pandor, hopefully in a minute or so. Lorraine's got a thought. Hi, Lorraine.
Hi, Ashraf. Thanks for taking my call, and hello to you and your listeners.
Hi, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, Ashraf, I think I've spoken on SAFM about this many moons ago. But, it seems like people of poorer communities, especially rural in the country, are not accommodated when it comes to being included in sporting codes, most of them. But I think rugby especially, because we can see how exponentially rugby is growing in the country, and it seems to be, I'm sorry to say this, my thought, an exclusive sport. Like, I'm not quite sure if I remember if the United Arab Emirates bought the stadium or they've leased it or whatever the case might be, but there's no rotating of these big matches which we'd all like to watch. Now imagine the poor child from a poor rural area that hardly has a TV in many instances, can't watch the match. So when are we going to get started with promoting these children to being excellent as I think they could be?
All right. So, Lorraine, we're on to news time, so I'll give you a quick response, okay? First of all, I'm not too sure of the deal with Emirates, but normally it would be a sponsorship, and that will allow branding rights absolutely as they've got, and that money goes into the coffers of the Lions, which they certainly need. In terms of rotation, the stadium events are definitely rotated. That's why the All Blacks haven't played the Springboks at Ellis Park for a long, long time. They are rotated across the country. The unions decide which ones are the big games and where they go to. So, for example, the Springboks, the All Blacks will not play the Springboks now in Durban this year, but they'll play in Cape Town, and then they rotate to Bloemfontein for some other games, etc., etc. The broader question, which is, can we grow not just rugby? Can we grow sporting excellence? No, can we grow excellence without young people having to leave their impoverished communities? That means, can we lift up the level of impoverished communities so they don't have to go from a public school in impoverished areas to a private school to succeed? That is my big bugbear. As I've said just now, why does a township still look like a township 30 years into democracy? Work that one out. Let's get the news now. Here's Greg Kroos.
Thanks Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories this hour. China willing to invest in South Africa's infrastructure, and Sweden recommends no screens for toddlers. Good afternoon, I'm Kolofelo Defo. Public Works Minister Dean McPherson says he has met Chinese business people who are willing to invest in infrastructure in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa and members of his cabinet are on a state visit to China, where Ramaphosa has met with his counterpart Xi Jinping. The two leaders have signed agreements that will increase trade between the two nations. McPherson is part of the delegation visiting Beijing.
I met with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It's the first time South Africa's ever met with them. We are a member of the bank, and we are looking at least 2 or 3 projects that we're going to get off the ground, that they're going to invest. Close to 10 billion rand of potential investment that we're looking at, as well as being involved in our big green hydrogen project. So this is a big win and a first for South Africa to be involved in. And we're also looking at some research and assistance, particularly in small harbours, developing them. So far it's been a very successful trip for us.
Government has put in place a stringent licensing system as part of the regulatory mechanism on carbon emissions and air quality control. Deputy Director General at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Maisela Kekana, revealed this at the annual gathering of the Air Quality Governance Lekgotla. The 3-day conference is being held virtually. Kekana says strides have been made towards ensuring cleaner air over the years.
Effective regulation. We have put in place the current licensing system coupled with minimum emission standards and obligatory reporting. This in itself a massive achievement. It is a massive achievement and is the core of our efforts to address air pollution. We are building on decades of experience internationally. We need to improve our ability to effectively monitor compliance and undertake enforcement actions where necessary.
The South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, in the Western Cape says they have provided alternative measures to ensure that more than 2,000 posts for teachers are not lost. This follows the Western Cape Department of Education's announcement that several teaching posts will be reduced due to budget cuts from national government. SATU spokesperson Sibongile Kwazi says the cuts will impact not only the teachers but also learners and families. We move to Limpopo now. The defense lawyer representing the former Lepelle Northern Water CEO Phineas Legodi has argued that delays in the corruption and fraud trial against his client are a witch hunt. The matter has been reinstated on the court roll after being withdrawn 2 years ago. Legodi and his co-accused are facing corruption charges over a 45 million rand tender. Legodi's lawyer Singabuli Mumano says the postponements are aimed at delaying justice.
It's a very, very weak case. It is evident from what you have just mentioned now that it was withdrawn and then brought back, withdrawn again, reinstated again. It was 3 times. You can see that the tactics of the state is just a witch hunt.
And finally, Sweden's public health minister says children under the age of 2 should not be allowed to watch screens, be it television or cell phones. The Swedish Public Health Authority has issued recommendations to restrict the use of digital media for both young children and teenagers. The BBC's Rachel Wright has the details.
Jakob Forsmed said a high use of digital media can be bad for children's sleep and cause weight gain because of a lack of exercise. He's announced recommendations for children of all ages, which include restricting those between the ages of 6 to 12 to no more than an hour a day in front of screens, whilst teenagers between 13 and 16 should have no more than 3 hours a day. But while the government is heading in favour of restricting screen time, some education experts say that children do need to learn how to use technology in moderation.
Recapping the top story this hour, Public Works Minister Dean McPherson says he has met Chinese business people who are willing to invest in infrastructure in the country. Headlines at 5:30 for SAFM News. I'm Kolofelo Defo.
In sports this hour, Verstappen urges Red Bull to change the whole car, and Springboks hopeful that skipper Kolisi will face the All Blacks after facial injury. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 southbound in Boksburg has a crash near the N12 highway. The N1 southbound in Veltervreden Park has a stationary vehicle near 14th Avenue. The N12 westbound in Eldorado Park has a crash before Klipspruit Valley Road exit, and the N4 Witbank Highway westbound in Pretoria has delays towards the N1 highway. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N2 southbound has a crash after the M7 highway. In Cape Town, Batencrest Street outbound slow moving towards the elevated freeway. Kloofnik Road outbound is slow moving towards Kloofnik. In Observatory, Lisbeek Parkway southbound slow moving towards the N2 highway, and Main Road southbound is slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic updates, I'm Irma G.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's Elimination Week and the bottom 6 must bake their ultimate cookie and milkshake pairing. It's a match made in heaven, but will they perfect their flavor combinations under pressure? Take part in the weekly viewers competition and stand a chance of winning a classic stand mixer to the value of 10,000 Rand. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
They will all walk onto the pitch with victory on their minds, but the final whistle will reveal who wants it the most, who will display football brilliance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matatanta Ladies FC versus the University of Fort Hare Ladies FC on Saturday, 7 September at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, we have had so many responses regarding the Springboks. And really, I'll just emphasize it once again. Let's not even talk about the game, okay? And this is the thrust of the conversation. What is it we can learn from the Springboks? Because don't tell me it's about rugby. It's not about rugby. It's an institution. And you can replicate institutions across the length and breadth of society. So what can we learn from the Springboks about the way they do their job, right? And replicate that in other aspects of South African society. And then, as we noticed, that there was this big Josie My Josie campaign to put things together to get the area around the Emirates Ellis Park all spruced up, and to get the train to Dawnfontein or Ellis Park to work for the very first time, I think, for a long, long time. Great collaboration with the Gautrain and Metro Rail, all of that to ensure that the experience was world class. And anecdotally, from what I've seen and heard, like, it was absolute magic. The question is, don't say, yeah, but it's only one day. The truth is that it is only one day. But the bigger challenge is, if we get it right one day, why can't we get it right every other day of the year across the board? Can you imagine someone going to the Charlotte Macleke Hospital and say, you know what? I've had the most amazing experience. I can't believe how top class is this institution. That's the challenge. Now, my question to you is, what stops us? Why can't we get that right? What's missing? What do we need to do next? It's so interesting. I'm talking about the Gautrain because my guest next up, he even had a train named after him for a while. I'm talking about the Shalowa Express. Mbazima Shalowa, good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf, and hi to your listeners.
Yeah, do people still call the train named after you? I'm just that's not the reason why we're talking, you know that, but I just thought it's an interesting one.
Well, people still do, but it was always going to be the Gautrain because in my view, and I think even the province at the time, we held a view, and I still hold that view, that never name institutions about living people because they may disappoint you tomorrow.
Well, there you are. So, okay, let's not talk about the Shilowa Express. We will also not talk about you and I being pretty depressed about Manchester United Football Club. So just park that aside. Let's talk about something far more important in the country right now. What do you make about, Nehawu and their conversations with the ANC? And then at the same time, there's been some apologies today, but the broader issue, there's been widespread rumors that, in fact, Nehawu and its link to COSATU may end, and they would actually throw in their weight behind another alliance with another political party, being the MK party, particularly in KZN province.
I think those rumors will always be there. But the reality is that I was surprised at the utterances of the provincial secretary of the ANC. One, in terms of what he said to the platform that he used, because even when you are angry with your partner, you try and be circumstanced, and if you really want to raise the issues, you call for a meeting, close the door, raise all of these issues in there. Secondly, I'm saying just rumors because, the issue of people leaving the ANC because there's a COPE breakaway, there's EFF of MKP, will always happen, but it is not going to be structures that will do so. And finally, I think even though Nehawu at the COSATU Congress were among those who were agitating for COSATU to stand with the SACP and have its contest elections on its own, that position did not carry the day at COSATU, either at Congress, where it was deferred, and later at the Central Executive Committee.
It's interesting you raised this. So therefore, what do you make, maybe first things first, with the relative strength or weakness of Nehawu as it stands now?
I think, public sector unions are strong in the sense that they are in the public service. They can always bargain for issues with the government. But I think there will always be irritations, especially during elections campaign, because there you're also dealing with lists, you're dealing with having to deploy people into positions of influence, and sometimes people will feel, well, we're doing the donkey work, but when it comes to deciding on who will have his nose in the trough, we are usually kept outside. So I don't think it is weak, but I think that the alliance in particular, or in general, when you look at both COSATU and the SACP, they feel that when it comes to issues of deciding strategically on governance, the ANC talks to them, says we hear you, goes ahead and act differently, which is something which have to be looked at not so much by Nehawu, but by COSATU, the SACP, and the ANC.
Well, it's interesting you bring up those two parties. I mean, the SACP, I think even as late as yesterday, once again, made the point of how they've differed with the ANC regarding the government of national unity. There's been this Nehawu apology today with the ANC Secretary General giving his thoughts on that. And it does question once again, I think, and I think COSATU may have said something similar regarding the GNU. In the light, therefore, of where we are as a country with these different political persuasions, John Steenhuisen, by the way, is with Ramaphosa in China now. I mean, that would be unprecedented before. How do you think that is impacting on this tripartite alliance? It's something that you would know very well of in the past.
I think it will always be an issue of debate. That debate, I think, is taking place even inside the ANC. But having said that, on the side of the ANC and of government, having made a strategic decision, that's the direction we want to go. All they need to do is to continue to manage the fallout, ensure that the government of national unity, to an extent possible, works. They bring in policies beyond existing ones by the ANC, beyond ones that may be suggested by other parties, to really look at the real challenges facing the country. The challenges are not the GNU. they are not the participation of other parties with the ANC in the GNU. They are about the fact that currently our economic growth is pedestrian. What should be done, including policy changes in the ANC, in the alliance, that will increase growth beyond what we saw in the early 2000 to 2009 before the crash internationally. Unemployment is at 40%. How do we bring it down to anything between 15 and 20% over the next 5 years? How do we bring in more police, nurses, doctors, and teachers, so that we don't really have to have many people, teachers teaching 70 people in a class, because you're now reducing people. You want an NHI, yet you don't have adequate doctors and nurses and auxiliary nurses, not to mention about hospitals and clinics that operate on a 24-hour service, sorting out home affairs. Those, for me, are the key issues, rather than the bickering over the nature of the government.
But it does present a unique challenge, certainly to unions, and yourself. You're a good example that once a unionist, once of the ANC, once the premier of this province, and then of COPE, so you understand different angles around this. And I'm putting it to you this way, that from a purely union perspective, right, for those unionists who've been disappointed with the ANC doing business with the DA as lack of as anti-transformatory, right, within the GNU, may also spend some time to question whether they've been transforming enough to the questions you've just raised about effectively changing the standards of living, even without the DA. That means it's not just transforming black-white, but transforming it in changing lives. And the ANC has probably statistically has fallen short on that.
Indeed, which is why I think that the GNU thing is just a diversion. The reality is that the GNU is maybe 3 months. It has not adopted any new policies that people can say it is that policies that are bringing about the malaise that our country faces. All of the problems that we're sitting with happened over a 30-year period that the ANC was in power. There were certain times when things worked. There were times when things didn't work. And I think my argument is that instead of bickering over the nature of the government, which people must be free to discuss, we must be answering the real questions of what do we need to do as a country, working with business, working with civil society, working with the trade unions, working with other political parties in parliament that are outside of the GNU to make all of these changes. It will only succeed if we all have one framework of mind, even if we differ, not because we are on a daily basis out on a radio complaining about our situation. That in itself doesn't bring about any changes.
Okay, let's end with the issue of again, Nehau as well as COSATU, right? Is it accurate to say that they are struggling to retain or to maintain a form of relevance, and they have greater challenges now because of the role of their mother body, in this case the ANC, as part of the tripartite alliance, doing things and being in a collaborative agreement with a party that they never saw doing any business with before? And that's represented a new challenge, a great challenge for these for the unions, and in a way they haven't quite addressed as yet.
It may be true, and I think they need really to come to terms to say, this is what we have now on the table. How do we engage in this new and changed terrain of struggle? But for me, the irony is that if you look at the terms around the ANC having sold out, the thing being neoliberal, these are not all new. In 1996, when GEAR was adopted, we faced similar challenges. And some of the people that were said to be anti this neoliberal ANC, being party members, Mantashe, Godongwane and others, they are now sitting there in that government of national unity. And it is the same people that solely says they are part of the president's neoliberal agenda. And I think for me, these are just labels. the pudding is going to be, the answer is going to be, will this GNU be able to bring changes, and will COSATU and the SACP reconcile themselves to how do we work with the ANC, strengthen it, rather than weaken it inside that GNU.
All right, and give us a soundbite answer to that, the question you've just raised, one quick answer.
Well, I think they have to go into the room, lock themselves out, develop new strategies, agree that we agree to disagree on the GNU. That was not the proposal we wanted to have, but it is what it is, and therefore, what are we going to do? Come out as one unit, spell out to the country what they are going to do to ensure that the ANC in 2026, in 2029, becomes a better organization that people can trust.
And that's where we can leave it in. Bazima Shalowa, the former General Secretary of COSATU, also formerly of the ANC, as well as COPE, giving his perspective. Union, political parties, what happens next?
The future of education is here. Impact offers 2 paths to the future. Design your own homeschooling journey with Impact Homeschooling, or let our experienced teachers guide the way with the Impact Online School. Get quality future-forward education. Visit www.impact.co.za today to register for 2025.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
It's been one of those weekends. There's been moments of absolute joy watching the Springboks with that thrilling victory. And then at the same time, you look at, and social media probably just does this quicker than most other places. You look at it and you realize that somebody you know has passed on. So I spent some time looking at a picture of myself with Thabiso Sekwani, which was taken at Gibbs about a year ago, and herself proudly displaying the books that she's had in vernacular languages for children, that she and they're beautiful, coloured, books that they have such magnetic appeal, right? And we chatted about it and took some pictures, and that's what I spend my time, late night, Saturday and Sunday morning, just thinking about it. Because, again, someone we know, someone who worked on this station on SAFM, sitting on this hot seat, and, of course, on many other stations and channels, has passed on. And it's a huge shock, not entirely clear what the circumstances are, but we thought let's talk about her and her legacy for a few minutes with someone who certainly worked with her, I think probably in one of her last major stints, which is David O'Sullivan. David, good chatting to you. Hi.
I'm so sad that it takes this to get me chatting to you, Ashraf. What a sad occasion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, my plan was to actually to message you the other day. Say, come on, I'm reading your Rusty book, and you know that, and I've just loved it. And we need to get an insight more into that mind of what I think is an absolute genius. But fine, another day, another time, right? Let's talk about maybe the genius of Thabiso. First of all, I mean, knowing that we've lost her and you've worked with her on a daily basis,
yes.
How do you even respond to that?
Well, it's with great bewilderment because we were planning to get together. We worked together for about 2 years on Kaya's breakfast show. She joined with Jason Goliath. I'd been doing the show for 2 years, and then we decided we needed more voices. We needed variation, and we certainly needed somebody like Thabiso Sekwani to come and join us. And the thing about her and Jason and I was that we have nothing in common. Our backgrounds are completely different. Our interests are completely different. There would be no reason why we should bond. But we did. And I think it's because when you're waking up at 4:30 in the morning and working at those blurry hours, and we went through COVID, and so you immediately find the common ground and you find the friendships. And the thing about Thabiso is that she made it so easy. She's not somebody who you have to chip away at. And and try and uncover. There are no layers to be sort of what you see is what you get, much like Jason is. And so we immediately became friends, and I knew that once the show came to its natural end, that we would remain friends, and so we did. The thing about Thabiso was that she had an impish sense of humor. In fact, she had a bizarre sense of humor. I was sitting back thinking about these things, and I just remembered she loved doing April Fool's gags. But they were terrible April Fool's gags.
Give us an example. Give us some examples.
So I'll give you 2 examples. So one was during COVID. We had the option of working together or working at remote locations, but working remotely came with all sorts of technical difficulties. As you know, in a radio and TV studio, you really want to see each other so you can cue each other. The non-verbal cues, their presence is the familiarity is what makes the show work. But doing it on a Teams or a Zoom link or whatever it was really, really tricky. So Jason and I were in. And she decided at the very last second, she said, no, I'm going to do this remotely, which irritated us. And we went through this whole show with her providing all these technical difficulties. 5 minutes before the end of the show, she walks into the studio. She'd been on the other side of the building in one of the recording studios. She'd been in the building the entire time. We said to her, we're not sure where the gag is. She said, no, it's funny because you guys were battling so much. So that was her mad idea of pulling a gag.
Crazy, yeah.
The other one was she said to me, watch, I'm going to pretend to faint in front of Jason. I said, no, but that's not funny. She goes, no, it is, watch me. And so she pretended to faint. Jason got the fright of his life, and then she sort of miraculously comes out. She said, April Fools. Well, he had some kind of trauma after that because he didn't trust her pranks.
Well, I can just imagine. Yeah. And I understand there was also one situation where her son, Lefika, screamed sort of out while she was working at home. Is that right? You know about that?
That's right. Now, DJ Keys, your producer, used to be my producer.
Exactly.
And Keys has got, he will remember the stories. But that's right. We had to, when we definitely had to be isolated from one another. In fact, we all got COVID at one stage. And we had to be isolated, but we managed to keep going with the show. And the little fella, he did not shut up the entire way through. But Thabiso was terrible in knowing whether her mic was on or not. It was a simple case of turn it off, turn it on. And she would not turn it off, and then she would yell at this little guy. And we would kill ourselves laughing because she would, unbeknownst to her, she'd think, well, she didn't even think about the microphone, but she would just lambaste this little guy who thought it was hilarious that he was getting in the way of his...
And did it come across that she was very motherly? Because, I mean, that's the sense that many people have spoken about. Tell me about that.
Yes, she was. She was forever asking after my kids and Jason's family and telling us about her kids. So we knew her children, and I think this, Ashraf, is what saddens me so terribly is when I heard she had passed away, Tibos Makwele phoned me and told me that she had passed away, and I immediately thought of her children. I thought, my God, they are left bereft because they were just the most wonderful, wonderful children. They had such great personalities. They were brought up properly, and I feel so sad about that. And she mothered us. You know, she'd say to Jason and I, there's no way you haven't eaten. You've got to have breakfast, because she would eat all the time. And so she would bring magwinyas to us, and she'd bring like 48 magwinyas. Well, but Jason and I polished all of them off. But that was her. But can I just tell you, Ashraf, what she would do is she would bring... Now, you know what it's like doing an early show. Yeah. You're there at 5 o'clock in the morning, so what are you going to have? You're going to have a bit of cereal, maybe a bit of fruit. No, she would come in with curries and spicy wings.
Oh, my goodness.
Time
like
of the morning.
A normal meal for supper.
And then hoover that food back. And then she was constantly eating. But she was tiny. She never, ever put on weight. I know there are a lot of women are going curses to you, Thabiso Sipwan, but that was Thabiso. But just the brightest. She had a thing about women advancement. She wanted to get the voices of the women of the Soweto 1976 uprising brought to the fore. She provided therapy, counseling. There was so much. She wrote a children's book, a religious book for children. Oh, she was amazing. The things that she never just said, I'm going to do this and then forget about it. She'd say, I'm going to do this and then did it.
Well, that is why the last time I met her and she shared the story of the books, the children's books, I mean, she was so passionate about it. And this was off air. We were at Gibbs, and just fascinating what she said. But just the last thing for you, right? If you could then use just one word to describe all things that you know about her, what would that word be?
Can I do two and just say big heart?
Okay.
She had a massive heart.
A big heart. And that's where we'll leave it, David O'Sullivan. Thanks for talking to us. We'll have a Rassie chat with you maybe after the Boks beat the All Blacks in the return game, because I want to get into the mind of Rassie Erasmus. Thanks for your time. But for today, it's really a sad time to reflect on someone that I knew, you spent more time with her, and many of the listeners here on SAFM certainly spent lots of time with her when she hosted the afternoon show, I think about 10 or 15 years ago. But there we are. David O'Sullivan, thank you for your time. Let's get the news headlines now. It's just gone there 5:30. Here's a Holofelo Tefo.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the headlines this hour, fuel prices are set to decrease on Wednesday for the fourth consecutive month. Economists expect inflation to continue to slow following this announcement. Transnet says it is still experiencing challenges which have affected its operational efficiency. The state-owned entity says challenges include underinvestment in the rail network, aging equipment and at the ports, and vandalism and theft. Public Works Minister gives positive feedback on a state visit to China led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Details at 6.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The R21 southbound in Boksburg has a crash near the N12 highway. The R24 eastbound in Kempton Park has a crash near Barbara Road. The N12 westbound in Eldorado Park has a crash before the Klipspruit Valley Road exit. Beyers-Naudé Drive westbound in Crest has a crash near Weltevreden Road, and the N4 Witbank Highway westbound in Pretoria has delays towards the N1 highway. In KZN, the N2 southbound slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound an earlier crash just after the M7 highway has been cleared, but traffic is still slow moving, and the N3 has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions between Lions River and Bulgowan. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road. The N2 outbound is slow moving towards the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Okay, not rugby, not Paralympics, not cricket, not football, not Mamelodi Sundowns. What are we talking about?
We're talking about motorsport, where Max Verstappen is saying that Red Bull need to change the whole car if he is to return to winning ways. Verstappen finished in 6th place at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, extending his winless run to 6 races. The result allowed Lando Norris to cut Verstappen's advantage at the top of the drivers' standings to 62 points, and McLaren have now closed down the constructors' gap to just 8 points with 8 races still to go. In Paralympic news, Puseletso Mabute is all set for the 100-meter T63 final. Remember, he clocked 12.5 seconds to equal the Paralympic record in his heat, and that final is at 20:8 this evening. Meanwhile, Lozan Kutsia claimed Team South Africa's second medal at the Paralympics with a bronze in the T11 1500-meter final and a personal best. Now, Kutsia clocked 4 minutes and 35.49 seconds in the final race to secure her place on the podium. In rugby, the Springboks are said to be assessing Siya Kolisi's availability for the clash against the All Blacks in Cape Town as they delayed their team announcement until Thursday. Kolisi suffered a suspected fractured cheekbone after being tackled by All Blacks flank Sam Cane. Though Kolisi tried to battle on, he was substituted at the start of the final quarter. Now, Springbok assistant coach Don Human says that they're still hopeful that Kolisi will be recovered on time for Saturday. And still staying with Kolisi, he could finally seal his return to the Sharks after an American businessman reportedly put his hand up and offered to pay the transfer fee demanded by French club Racing 92. Now, Kolisi's return to South Africa seemed to have reached a stalemate after it was reported that the Sharks were not willing to put up to £726,000, which is around 17 million rand, to buy him out of his contract. And as I stepped out, Ashraf, someone was asking me, do you think that American businessman is not Jay-Z?
Oh, okay. Well, there seems to be this thing with popular culture and these big names like Hold It. We will start owning these spaces.
Right, and I'm just thinking Rock Nation. But anyway, we'll definitely keep you up to date as the story is building up. In football, Marumo Gallants coach Dan Malisela says that their aim this season is to remain in the top half of the league when they resume their journey in the top flight football. Gallants are in the Premiership after buying the status of Morocco Swallows, and they'll be based in the Free State. They kickstart their campaign against Kaizer Chiefs on the 14th of September at Free State Stadium, and Malisela says that they're raring to go.
Well, but the pressure is different because now you don't want to go through what you went through, and you need to do well, we're always aspiring to do good, and this time I think one needs to do better, far better than what we went through, the last time. I'm feeling good. It's good to be here. It's good to be back in the PSL.
Meanwhile, Napoli have reportedly approved a deal for Victor Osimhen to join Galatasaray on loan until the end of the season. The deal is it's a dry loan without an option to buy as long as Galatasaray cover his salary of nearly 11 million euros per season. The alternative would have been for the Turkish club to pay a fee for the loan but have the wages shared between them. But we'll definitely keep you up to date as the story develops. In cricket, the highly anticipated third season of the SA20 is set to begin on the 9th of January with the final set for the 8th of February. And that's happening at the Wanderers Stadium for the second time. The two-time defending champion Sunrisers, the Eastern Cape, set the stage with the clash against the MI Cape Town in the opener at St. George's Park. Meanwhile, SA20 has partnered with CSA to launch the school tournament side of things, which will be streamed live, and it will feature 500 plus schools and over 1,000 plus matches. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. I'll have more on other sports tomorrow.
And about the Rock Nation too.
Hopefully there's...
see, you're still linked to that company that does his...
Yes.
That's Rock Nation, right?
Yeah.
So
I guess that question was not far off.
No.
If that American businessman is Jay-Z or not.
Well, whether it's Rock Nation is in ROC or not, at the moment with the box winning, we can say the nation rocks. That's, I think, for now at least. Right, more sports not in an hour, unless I stick around longer. No, we don't have extra time here. More sports tomorrow. Thanks.
They will all walk onto the pitch with victory on their minds, but the final whistle will reveal who wants it the most, who will display football brilliance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matatanta Ladies FC versus the University of Fort Hare Ladies FC on Saturday, 7 September at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Hey Mike, congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Andile. Are you preparing for it?
Yes, but not just for myself.
For you and?
For me and my employees.
Oh.
Since we moved to Old Mutual Corporate, their retirement funds have not only been safe and secure, but gaining competitive returns through exposure to diverse investment markets.
Impressive.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, it's the SFM market update as always with Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, good chatting to you. Right, so what's moving markets in the USA in particular?
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening to our listeners. The US is actually on holiday, and that's the reason markets are having such a quiet afternoon. It's Labor Day celebrations taking place in the US. As a result, markets, as I said, are closed there, but we have been seeing some movements happening throughout the rest of the world. If we start with Asian markets, they would have been trading first as we start off this new week. Sydney was flat. Hong Kong was down 1.7, almost 1.8%. Shanghai was down 0.9%. The Nikkei in Tokyo was flat as well. The CAC 40 in France, marginally in the green, about 0.04%. Almost flat as well. The DAX in Germany absolutely flat, and the the FTSE in London was down 0.16%. If we have a look at some South African movements, we didn't have the best start to the week, starting the week in negative territory, with the financials down 0.45%, industrial 0.35 in the red, and resources 0.15% in the red. As a result, the all share was down 1/3%. The top 40 was down 1/3%. Some of the movers there that might stand out to our listeners. On the negative side, the likes of Harmony having a bearish day, the likes of the Purple Group having a bearish day, the likes of Sanlam and Kumba also having a bearish day. Each of these companies were down by more than 3.4%. The likes of Sasol down 2.5%. Some companies that had a really good day today, ARK Invest up 9.2% off the back of that announcement that Sanlam Life would be taking a 25% stake in that business. Amplat's showing signs of recovery, up about 5% on the day. Had a torrid week last week. Implat's the same, up about 8% at the moment, and the likes of Alex Forbes up about 2.5%, and Dischem up about 2%. So certainly some movements on the local front, but mostly subdued due to the US not having much involvement this afternoon. If we look at some currency movements, the Rand 17.86 against the US dollar, 1 British pound is 23 Rand and 48 cents, 1 euro sitting at around 19 Rand and 77 cents. Quick look at commodities while we're at it. Gold price $2,501 an ounce, about 1/3% in the green. Brent crude $78.80 a barrel, looking fairly good for the fuel price conversations that we have. We know we're expecting a fuel price cut this month. Hopefully this can continue into the rest of the year. Platinum and palladium still struggling along, not yet above $1,000 an ounce yet, so we'll look at them when they do decide to come back to the party. But what we will be looking at on the show today is we'll be taking a look at RCL Foods results. Got a conversation with the RCL CEO, Paul Cruikshank, around the performance of the company, especially following that unbundling of Rainbow. The unbundling would have been effective up to the end of the current financial year, and we're going to reflect on that financial year and see where to from here for RCL Foods. We've also got a conversation with Bidvest around their results. I've got a conversation with the CEO, Mpumi Madisa, around the performance of the business throughout the year. Strong set of numbers from the Bidvest group, and we're going to look at what they are looking forward to in the new year. Then we've got a conversation with the International Trade and Administration Commission, ITAC. The commissioner, or the Chief Commissioner, responds to some reports that suggest that ITAC hasn't reviewed some of its tariffs in as much as 20 years, and last year, in the last financial year, they collected around 81 billion rand in import duties that was collected in South Africa. So we're going to look into that. We're going to look into the reports. We're going to look into the tariff side of it and what goes into tariff implementation policies and how they decide what it is that they want to do. And then, because it's Monday, we've got personal finance on a Monday. We're going to be taking a look at insuring yourself for the unusual. There was a very interesting article that suggests that there was a space debris found in the Eastern Cape in St. Francis Bay, and I wondered, what if that space debris had hit someone's house or someone's car? So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at weird events that you can insure yourself for, or weird things that you should probably speak to your insurance broker about.
Okay, and just to end with here's a masterclass question you can answer. Why do we have 3 trading sessions?
So if you think about the world being, well, whether you're a flat earther or a round earther, it doesn't really make a difference. The world is divided into kind of 3 main sessions from a trading perspective. There's Asian session, there's London session, and there's US session. Now, this is based on time zones. These various regions are awake at different times of the day, and as a result, there's different levels of liquidity within each sort of trading session. So Asian session, bulk of that liquidity sits within the Japanese markets, the Chinese markets, and the Australian markets. And if we look at the London session, bulk of that sits within the London markets, and most of the currencies, interestingly enough, highest liquidity or the highest availability of liquidity in London session is in London session between the 3 sessions. So the sessions are divided based on the way the world is set up, and it just means you and I have to trade at 3 different times during the day. Some people trade once throughout, some people trade at different times.
Okay, so blame it on a 24-hour day and different time zones, and now we have that. Right, you have a good show. I'm sure people will join you. 6 o'clock. Jimmy, thanks for that. We'll chat tomorrow.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Okay, there's further comments. We've got some voice notes that I'll pick out. And here's another one that I think it touches, not a nerve. It certainly gets you thinking.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The thing with the sports in impoverished communities, private schools have the tendency to buy the best players that come from impoverished schools. I've seen this happen many times before. And that is where impoverished communities can't be lifted up. This comes from Terence.
Okay, Terence, I agree, and that's why my point, why does a township look like a township? So the way to stop a private school buying your players and poaching them and giving them, incentivizing them, is to be able to develop your school to the same level. I'm talking now sports specifically, as a private school, so they don't have to go. And that will require an injection from education and the sports ministry. And if it hasn't happened in 30 years, then what are they there for? That's why we don't have. That's the transformation that, in fact, I want to see. Katu, let's get your thoughts. Hi.
Hello.
Katu, you're live. Go ahead. Yeah. Hello.
Oh, I'm back.
Yeah.
While watching the rugby this weekend, I said to my 12-year-old, I said, "Wow, since John Olomo died, the New Zealand has become a weaker team." And my son said, "No, the Springboks have become a stronger team." And that really knocked me behind the head. And I thought, you know what? The Springboks are such a big brand. I think somebody mentioned this to say, why don't people support Bafana, Banyana as much as they do the Springboks? I think it's more about the brand. The brand is even bigger than the country. It's an international brand. And people stand behind it because it wins games. And I think more needs to be done maybe for your Banyanas and your Bafanas to uplift the brand.
Well, I completely concur. The amount of people I know who went to the rugby who are not naturally rugby supporters on Saturday, purely because they want to be associated with something that not just wins, but they just inspire. Because, they could have easily lost. They could have lost in the World Cup. There's fine lines. But one thing, what's clear is they don't give up. And that's why your son is right. They're not just stronger, but I'll probably add the next part of it. They're stronger together. And if you look at that principle of stronger together in all aspects of South African life, that's the part that we need to hook on to, right? So thanks for that, Katu. So, by the way, let me just say this. If you listened, two things. I had a chat with Mike Sharman on Thursday about brand Springbok. Listen to that podcast. We'll tweet it out as well, maybe tonight. But listen to the podcast. Just go to safm.coza, and then you'll find it on the National Pulse, and then all the podcasts of the show are there. And Mike Sharman, who's a marketer who understands sport and marketing really well, speaks extensively about just the power of that brand. I think it's a really fascinating conversation indeed. The second thing that I'll tell you now, as part of my That's My Point daily commentary, I spoke about what I felt was Siya Kolisi displaying the type of emotional maturity, emotional intelligence that you don't even see with sports people, but you certainly don't even see it with other leaders in other forms of society. Okay, so please listen to that and give me your thoughts. But just to recap, I quoted extensively from his after-match interview. So we thought, hey, you know what? Since we get into winning mode as we wrap up the show, here's more from Siya Kolisi.
On behalf of the team, we just want to say thank you so much for your support. Not just for tonight. You've carried us through so many battles, and us as a team, we play for a lot, but you, the people of South Africa, our number one motivation. You give us a motivation even each and every single day. We appreciate you, and everyone, driving down the bus today, there were so many different people from different walks of life, homeless people, seeing us and jumping up and down, people who can't be here today. So we say thank you, and we represent everyone. We appreciate you, and please don't stop. When the things are tough, please carry on supporting us. We can't do it without you.
Okay. He also said more. I mean, he said a whole lot more about gender-based violence and 30 years of democracy, and not everybody is free. And I thought we'd just give you that teaser, but maybe listen to my earlier comments on the live stream, and you'll get a sense. But of course, you can YouTube his comments as well as I expect you to do. Now, one of the things we do is we wrap up the show every day. Is we focus on winning. And therefore the Siya Kolisi example. But there are other people in the country winning as well. Thank goodness for that, right? Because we certainly want to be the multipliers when it comes to winning. And Dr. Debbie Bradshaw is one of them. We'll talk to her after this.
The Mediterranean Knights are after the big prize, a win in the opener of the AFCON qualifier. But Amavubi differs and insists on travelling back home with a massive bag of 3 points. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Libya versus Rwanda on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM, setting the nationwide agenda daily.
Right, so let's talk winning with Dr. Debbie Bradshaw, who's a biostatistician as well as an epidemiologist. Dr. Bradshaw, Debbie, I appreciate your time and thanks for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, we're talking to you because we like to talk to winners and to just make the point, we understand that the University of Cape Town, in fact UCT, will confer an honorary doctorate to Dr. Debbie Bradshaw. That's to yourself, coming up soon. So we thought, let's talk about you and why, right? So firstly, thanks for that and well done. How important is this honorary doctorate coming up sometime soon?
It's coming up tomorrow. And indeed, I'm very honored to be awarded this by the university. Usually one has to work hard at academic work to be conferred a doctorate degree, but this has been awarded to me on the basis of my lifetime work, and I didn't have to study for it. I was just able to do my daily job, and as a statistician, I enjoy working with numbers, so I can't complain. I've been very privileged to be able to do research that I found really interesting, and I'm delighted to be awarded this degree.
Well, we're delighted for you as well. Maybe just take us back to your winning journey in terms of more detail about the work you do and why you do it.
Sure. I trained as a statistician working with numbers and became very interested in the health of people, and we tried to make sense of the causes of death being experienced in South Africa, because that really indicates, gives us information about the health needs. And over the years have been able to bring together different data sets to get the picture of how health has changed in the country, how it differs between different groups and social class, and the emerging epidemics were quite profound in 2000 or so with the rise of HIV, and more recently with the COVID pandemic. It's been really, really interesting.
Fascinating, field. One is understanding stats, as you said, and then the issue of epidemiology. Again, you made reference to COVID, and I would think you must have very interesting conversations with people outside your workspace when they find out what you do.
I'm a quiet sort of person, so I usually listen to what they do before they start listening to me. One of the big interesting things has been when we've hit political issues and with the HIV pandemic, we really had to deal with HIV dissidents and try and convince particularly politicians that they needed to take it very seriously.
Why did you choose to study and to get into the fields that you did?
A very interesting question, because in fact I'm a second generation, and my mother was during the Second World War practiced statistics and was in the army with helping with the Air Force decide on training pilots who would be eligible to be trained as a pilot. And I guess that's where my interest in numbers has come from. But she also moved into the field of epidemiology and started working on cancer research. In my very early days, I was privileged to be able to do some research with her. We both worked on a paper looking at esophageal cancer in KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay, and when we, as a people, are beneficiaries of that, I mean, I'm quoting Prof. Moshabela from UCT saying, throughout a career spanning nearly 50 years, Dr. Bradshaw has tirelessly advocated for the marginalized and vulnerable, fearlessly speaking truth to power. Her expertise and public contributions to health policy debates in South Africa highlights her ability to collaborate with all stakeholders, including national and provincial governments, to promote evidence-based health policies that improves the lives of all South Africans. Here's a question to you. When you hear that sort of citation coming from, leading figure within UCT, and you being this advocate for the marginalized and vulnerable and globally recognized, how do you feel about it?
To be honest, I'm very humbled. When I was told that I was being awarded this, I felt, why me? All the work that I do is with a lot of people, and it's not just my work. But as I said to my colleagues, I'll take the hit for this one. I'll be the team member who takes the hit.
Mm-hmm. What about in your makeup? I mean, we talk about people. We say they're winning, right? You're clearly winning. What about if you look at your personality and the decisions you've made? What has helped you being this winner that you are?
So there are two things. The one is, I think it does come down to hard work. Nothing comes easily. You do need to do the homework. But the second thing is to reflect on the importance of what you're doing. Sometimes we do things that are nice to do, but they're not really important. And I have been very, very fortunate to be able to do work that I think is highly important.
Wonderful. Well, I tell you what, we are very fortunate to have you in our midst, and ahead of tomorrow's all-important conferring of the honorary doctorate on you. It's wonderful to preempt all of that and talk to you. So thank you for giving up your time, Dr. Debbie Bradshaw.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful indeed. We'll have another feature. We do this every day, speaking to winners in their field, in whichever way they win. They're very, very different, but we certainly talk to them as well. By the way, it just gives me a chance to tell you, we have the National Pulse channel now on WhatsApp. So what about you wanting to join in? And I see there's a few people saying, yeah, please do. So if you want to join in, just WhatsApp us to 0614 104 107 and then just say join in and you'll be in, right? So that's the first thing. Number two, You can follow us, certainly follow me on social media platforms, all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and SFM as well, of course, right across the board. And feel free to engage with us. We certainly love that, the National Pulse, and perhaps suggestions and ideas that you've got. Today, by the way, also was day one of a new host for the morning show. So did you listen to Tulasi's with Simalani? I certainly did. I hope you did. I'll do it again tomorrow. On that thought, think about that. Let's get the news now. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Kholofelo Tefo.
Thanks, Ashraf. For top stories, the sour fuel prices set to drop on Wednesday, and China willing to invest in South Africa's infrastructure. Good evening. Economists expect inflation to continue to slow following the announcement of another fuel price cut, which takes effect from midnight tomorrow. Fuel prices are set to decrease on Wednesday for the fourth consecutive month. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources has announced a petrol price decrease of 92 cents a litre for both grades. The wholesale price of diesel is set to decline by 79 cents a litre and illuminating paraffin by R1.38 a litre. Wits Professor Jenny Ressel.
The announced decline in the South African fuel price for September 2024 is a very positive development, as it will reduce inflationary pressures in the South African economy. This fuel price decline was informed by an improvement in the exchange rate of the rand. So if the rand stays at current levels, this lower fuel price might also be sustainable. However, this positive development can only continue if we do not see a sharp decline in the exchange rate of the rand in coming months.
Transnet, which has reported increased losses of 7 billion rand for the current year, says it is still experiencing challenges which have affected its operational efficiency. The state-owned entity says challenges include underinvestment in the rail network